Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 6 of What If Sonic and his friends were in Remnant. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Let's dance. Beacon has been infiltrated. Glinda questioned as she and Ironwood stood alongside Ozpin, who sat at his desk in his office. Facing them was the combined group of Teams Sonic and Dark, having told the professors in general what they learned from their fight against Eggman and his allies. They left out the involvement of Teams RWBY and JNPR because they didn't want to get them into any trouble, and the kids all had enough to deal with right now. Yeah, that's what Pfeiffer said. Sonic confirmed. And how can you be certain he wasn't attempting to deceive you? Ironwood questioned skeptically. He was a child. Shadow narrowed his eyes at the general. His life was taken when he tried to share that information with us. Do you truly believe that a child would throw their own life away to try and deceive us? Ironwood's expression softened slightly. No, that's not what I meant. He took a deep breath before continuing. What happened to that boy was regrettable, and I'm sorry if I sounded insensitive. Ozpin, while he did indeed feel a great deal of pity for the young man who had his life taken, especially when he was about to take the first step in changing his life for the better, also felt the need to learn all that he could from this encounter and decided to continue. Please, what can you tell us of this assailant whom you pursued? The headmaster of Beacon urged. It was a woman. Tails explained. We didn't see her face. She had a motorcycle helmet, but I think her semblance had some control over fire or heat. She could shoot flames from her palms and feet and superheat her own body temperature. She had a weapon that seemed a mix between a bow and arrow with short blades. Shadow added. She was even able to use her power to superheat her tools as well. You remember that lady from the ship who helped Torchwick back when you and I first met RWBY? Sonic asked Glinda specifically. I think it was her. Are you sure? She asked. Yeah, Sonic nodded. I didn't see her face either of those times, but the way she was fighting and the powers she was using, unless she has a twin sister who's got the same kind of powers, I think it's the same chick. Nobody has the same semblance. Ozpin shook his head. Even siblings or family members who develop similar abilities have some form of differentiation in their semblance's development. There are very few exceptions where the power is hereditary, however. Ironwood added, having known about the semblance of Winter's family. But the odds of it being the case here are also unlikely. What I am wondering is how they were able to infiltrate Beacon in the first place. Fake transcripts. Shadow said, gazing at Ozpin as Tails looked away slightly with a knowing expression in his eyes. Others have attempted to enter this school through that method, correct? True. The headmaster of Beacon confirmed, being reminded of his talk with Shadow in regard to John's attempt to do the same thing. But I suspect that it wasn't as simple as that. The Vital Festival. Rouge spoke up. What do you mean? Amy asked. Think about it. Rouge explained. Hundreds of other students from the other academies come here to participate in that tournament, right? Instead of just trying to get into Beacon, they sneak in through one of the other schools, probably using fake transcripts as Shadow suggested, and just blend in with all the other hundreds of students that come here. Essentially a needle in a haystack. Knuckles understood. That's pretty clever. Did you get a description of who these infiltrators may be? Or even how many there were? Glinda asked. Negative. Omega replied. The Faunus known as Pfeiffer was terminated before any critical information could be given. However, his exact words were, I think they're human, which suggests they are more than one, and these infiltrators are human and do not have any affiliation with the White Fang. But they are working with Eggman. Sonic said. Pfeiffer said that a woman was talking with Eggman, maybe it was the same one we chased down, but I don't know for sure. Ozpin contemplated all of this. This is disturbing. And with so many students here at Beacon from the other academies, it is indeed the equivalent of looking for a needle in a haystack, as Knuckles pointed out. Not to mention that they probably know we're onto them now. Knuckles added. So they're going to be extra careful. However, if they've gone to such measures to infiltrate Beacon, it's for a specific reason. Shadow said, gazing at Ozpin. They're after something. As this is your academy, do you have any ideas as to what it may be? There could be a number of reasons. Ozpin answered. They may be after a piece of information, or perhaps to take the life of a specific individual, or an act of sabotage of some sort. Shadow knew Ozpin at least had some idea of what a potential target was but was intentionally leaving out any specific details. Shadow's suspicion of Ozpin was a given, but Sonic himself was starting to feel a bit uncomfortable. He remembered what he heard from Penny about her being needed to save the world from an unknown force and that Ironwood was directly involved somehow, but the fact that Ozpin gave a somewhat vague answer also told him that Ozpin himself was involved as well. But they'll think on that later. There was no need to create any tension when they had bigger things to worry about. Well, let's think about any possible ideas. Amy suggested. Maybe there's a way we can use that to lure the bad guys out. Instead of searching and looking into the records of virtually every Huntsman student on the planet, let's make them come to us. Rouge added. What do you have in mind? Ozpin asked. As Sonic tried to think, he also remembered how the tower they were standing in was also the central hub for Remnant's communication in Vale, the cross-continental transmit system. Each of the 4 academies had one. A grin formed on his face as an idea came to mind. Hey, isn't there some kind of dance going on later this weekend? The Blue Hedgehog asked. The next day, Beacon had been infiltrated. By whom? What were they seeking? Those were among the many thoughts that occupied Pyrrha's mind, but she couldn't dwell on that too much. She trusted Sonic and the others to handle this. It was best to focus on her studies at this time, or in this case, her combat session against all of Team CRDL, which she just won single-handedly. All 4 members laid defeated on the ground of the arena as the session came to an end. And that's the match, Glinda said as she walked up. Lucky shot, Cardin grimaced before falling over. Well done, Miss Nikos. Glinda congratulated. You should have no problem qualifying for the tournament. Thank you, Professor. Pyrrha smiled. Alright, now I know that's a tough act to follow, but we have time for one more sparring match. Any volunteers? Glinda looked up to the other students attending this session, among them included the 4 members of Team RWBY, with Emerald and Mercury happening to sit behind them. The professor noticed that Blake was more interested in whatever she was reading than the session. Miss Belladonna. That startled Blake as she swiftly closed her book. You've been rather docile these past few classes. Why don't you? I'll do it. Mercury raised his hand, volunteering. Mercury, is it? Very well. Let's find you an opponent. Glinda went to her scroll, but Mercury spoke up. Actually, I wanna fight her. He pointed right to Pyrrha, much to her own surprise. Me? I'm afraid Miss Nikos has just finished a match. Glinda stated. I recommend you chose another partner. No, it's fine. Pyrrha didn't seem to mind before looking up toward Mercury. I'd be happy to oblige. It didn't take long for Mercury to get down into the arena, and equip his personal weapon, Talaria, a pair of boots with guns built into them. He stood on the opposite end of the ring to face off against Pyrrha, both combatants at the ready. Mercury made the first move, rushing Pyrrha to lunge a kick forward, which she blocked with her shield before swiping Milo at his other leg to knock him off his feet. But he quickly recovered, spinning his legs in the air before flipping back a few times to land back on his feet and face Pyrrha again. Pyrrha rushed again as Mercury threw out a series of kicks, which she blocked and parried with Milo and a Ko. She slashed at him with Milo, but he kicked it down and shot his foot at her, which she blocked again with a Ko, slicing again, only for him to kick the blade down, but Pyrrha lunged forward, knocking her shield into him to push him backwards. He skidded to a halt on his feet and gave an amused chuckle. Hey, your friend's doing pretty good. Ruby smiled to Emerald, who smiled back, but when Ruby turned to watch the fight again, Emerald rolled her eyes in annoyance. Mercury leapt into the air, delivering a spinning axe kick toward Pyrrha, which she parried with her shield while moving backwards to gain some distance, locked herself down as she brought Milo and Ko together, using the shield to take the majority of his kicks, until it seemed like he kicked Milo from her hands. When he tried to press his advantage and deliver a kick toward her, she blocked it with her free arm. Mercury looked in surprise for a second before he narrowed his eyes and tried to kick at her again, but she spun around to collect Milo while it was still airborne and parried all his strikes with her sword and shield, only for Milo to get kicked from her hands again and left impaled in the ground and away from her grip. He smiled triumphantly and tried to kick toward her face, but she raised her hand and channeled only a bit of her polarity power to his boot and force him to miss his kick, causing him to nearly trip up, though he stabilized himself as he landed on his hand and knee, taking a moment to think about what just happened before understanding. Pyrrha charged him again as he stood up, lunging both his feet at her, which she blocked with Milo right as he fired the guns in his boots as she pushed him back. He landed to see her charging again, but before she even closed the distance. "I forfeit," he said, startling Pyrrha and halting her advance as she stopped just past him. "You don't even want to try?" she asked in confusion. "What's the point? You're a world-renowned fighter." Mercury shrugged. "We're obviously leagues apart." Pyrrha couldn't help but look a tad suspicious at that remark, or rather how casually he said that. She could tell that this Mercury was actually a very decent fighter and something of a challenge for her. It didn't quite seem like he was giving himself enough credit, or rather, that was the impression he was trying to give. In that case, Pyrrha Nikos is the victor of the match, again. Glinda announced. "Next time, you might want to think a little harder before choosing an opponent," she said to Mercury. "I'll be sure to do that." Mercury waved before walking away. The bell rang, ending the class, while also waking up Blake from her little catnap. "That is all for today," Glinda said to the students as they began to stand up and collect their belongings. "And remember, the dance is this weekend. But you all have your first mission on Monday. I will not accept any excuses." Emerald waited outside for Mercury as she watched the other students, including RWBY and Pyrrha, leave the room before Mercury finally showed up. "Learning is so much fun," he said in a somewhat sinister tone. Team RWBY exited from the amphitheater and outside before they heard somebody call to them. "Oh, hey guys. Wait up." They turned around to see Sun and Neptune approach them, with two other individuals right behind them. One was a young man's skin with red hair over his right eye in a complete undercut, only revealing his left eye as a green color with several red markings around it. He wore a primarily white outfit with a red military police-like jacket draped over his left side. The other was another young man with dark skin, gold eyes and green hair. He had tattoos of wings on his chest and Roman numerals all around his neck. He wore a white long coat with a golden pauldron on his right shoulder along with a pair of black pants. "Hey, Sun," Ruby waved. "I want you guys to meet the rest of my team." Sun introduced. "You already know Neptune, this is Scarlet and Sage. We're Team SSSN. "Hello." Scarlet greeted formally. "Hey there." Sage waved. "Nice to meet you all." Ruby waved. "So, Blake," Sun moved to get her attention, apparently oblivious to the fact that she looked incredibly tired. "I hear there's this dance going on this weekend." "Ah, sounds pretty lame." He scoffed slightly. "But you and me, I'm thinking, not as lame, huh?" "What?" Blake questioned. "The dance. This weekend. You wanna go or what?" Sun asked excitedly. She gave him an unamused glare. "Is that a joke? Tell me you're joking." "And no, not a joke. I mean, I do make jokes, you know I do, but, I'm serious here, you want to go to the dance?" Sun asked, this time looking a bit more nervous from the tone she spoke to him with. "Did you just so happen to forget what happened recently?" Blake reminded. "A madman has taken control of the White Fang, providing them with weapons of mass destruction more advanced than anything Atlas can come up. This school's been infiltrated, someone was killed right in front of us." She exclaimed. "You saw that, remember?" "Why yeah, you're right. I was there." Sun held his hands up defensively. "That was really messed up. So why would I waste my time on a stupid dance when there are more important things going on right now?" Blake shouted, causing her own teammates and that of Sun's to look with a mixture of awkwardness and concern. I don't know, a little bit of fun with your friends." Sun winced. "You and I are not friends." She got up close and pointed to his chest to get her point across. "When we first met, you stalked me all the way back to Beacon, then you butt in on not only my personal matters but a mission that you weren't even asked to be involved in. I might have told you about my reasoning for going against the White Fang, but that doesn't automatically make you my friend. You wanna waste your time at that dance, go ahead, that's your call. Just leave me out of it." Blake turned around and began to walk away, leaving her teammates surprised and stunned at how she spoke to Sun. Blake may not be all sunshine and rainbows, but they never expected her to say something like that. RWBY glanced with concern towards Sun, who only looked down with a hurt expression. Later that evening, Team RWBY went to their dorm to meet up with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, the group sitting around on chairs in their bunk beds. "You guys said you wanted to talk to us," RWBY asked. "Does it have anything to do with finding Eggman?" Blake questioned eagerly, which everyone noticed. "We'll get to that, I promise," Sonic assured. "But first things first, Pfeiffer." The mention of the young pig Faunus caused many in the group to look uncomfortably, or angry in Blake's case. "How are you guys holding up from that?" It's just, RWBY couldn't find the right words, even as Yang reached out to put a hand on her younger sister's shoulders. "It's the first time somebody was killed right in front of you," Knuckles assumed. RWBY only gave a single nod. Knuckles saw the look in Yang's eyes that silently suggested the same thing for her. They may have seen news reports and stuff on TV, but actually seeing someone die right in front of them, especially in such a brutal way, was a different experience altogether. "How are you doing, Weiss?" Tails asked. "I honestly don't know," the heiress replied, shifting her feet slightly as she sat on the bed. The words of hate he said to her were still fresh in her mind. "You all know how I feel about the White Fang. What they do is wrong, but I can at least acknowledge why they feel they do what they do. But what happened to his brothers, and the fact they were killed in my company's mines, but the fact that he himself didn't get any kind of compensation. I don't blame him one bit for hating me. But Weiss, it's not your fault," RWBY tried to tell her. "Maybe not, but the way my family company's acting, how people are getting hurt and dying, something has to be done," Weiss stated. I can't stand the way the SDC is. I've known it's gone in a dark direction ever since my father took over, but when you actually hear the voice of a victim who was directly hurt by them, it puts things into a different perspective, doesn't it?" Sonic assumed. "Yes," Weiss confirmed. I know accidents and fatalities are high in the dust mines, and I don't approve. But hearing reports is different than actually meeting a victim. That poor kid lost the only family that he had," Yang muttered. "And when he was ready to accept our help, somebody killed him." Yang clenched her fists in anger, a feeling that Blake also felt. Truth be told, if Pfeiffer was able to walk away from the White Fang, Blake would have tried to find a way to help him find a new path in life, but now that was no longer possible. All the more reason Eggman had to be stopped. "Listen, this is the sort of thing that happens in this line of work," Knuckles told all four girls. "When you fight, or go up against someone as dangerous as Eggman, people can get hurt, sometimes even killed. Has that ever happened to any of you?" RWBY asked softly. "Have you seen people die?" The three of them shared looks with one another before Tails answered. "Yes, it has." All four girls listened as the fox continued. "We always try to help as many people as we can. But the truth is, no matter how smart, strong, or fast we are, no matter how many friends we got, there's always going to be someone that's outside our reach and things outside our control. Sometimes, it may be one or a small group of people, other times, it's a catastrophe where there are too many casualties to count." Sonic and Knuckles instantly thought of what happened at Station Square when perfect chaos was unleashed. Many people in the city had evacuated when Eggman attacked, but not everyone was able to get out in time. When perfect chaos arose, so many people died. It was probably in the thousands at least, men, women, maybe even children. The only other incident that likely raked up more casualties was when Dark Gaia was unleashed, and the planet broke apart. The chaos that erupted from that incident was far greater. Sonic happened to pay a glance at the bracelet on his right wrist, the silver ring with the green jewel on it as he thought about Chip. Though he knew Chip wasn't technically dead, just in slumber alongside Dark Gaia for the next cycle. But he would likely never see him again. And it wasn't just Chip. He remembered Shara dying in his arms, as well as Caliburn breaking apart, and both happened because they were trying to save him. Granted, they were both resurrected shortly after he defeated Erizar and Merlina respectively, but he would never forget what happened. He knew that their resurrections were only under special circumstances and stuff like that, including Shadow's survival after their stopping of Space Colony Ark's crash into the Earth, would most likely not happen again. Dying is, for the most part, permanent. Even the fastest thing alive can't always save everyone. Sonic said with a serious expression, causing all the girls to look at him. This is kinda the reason why some of us weren't in favor of you helping us. Look, I'm going to be blunt here, stuff like this is probably going to happen again, especially if Eggman's involved. We'll try and save as many people as we can, but we can't always save everyone. And it might be a bit much for you guys. So, if any of you want out, just say the word now. I promise, we won't hold anything against you. RWBY, Yang, Weiss, and even Blake all glanced at each other, considering what Sonic said. The look in Blake's eyes made it clear that she wasn't backing down, something Knuckles was expecting as he knew how personal this was for her. I know being a huntress isn't easy. RWBY began, getting all their attention. Maybe we will be dealing with hard stuff like innocent people dying, and maybe we can't save everyone. But if we quit trying just because it gets hard, then we've already lost. People like Eggman, who think they can hurt people and do whatever they want and get away with it, we can't let them have their way. Someone has to take a stand and stop them. I know you can do it, Sonic. You and all your friends, but this is our home. We have to take a stand and defend it, because that's our duty. We're supposed to be the protectors of this world, so we're in this all the way. We're not backing out. Absolutely. Weiss nodded in agreement, surprised and impressed with how mature and resolved her leader and partner was. You guys aren't getting rid of us that easily. Yang said with her grin, with a determined look in her eyes. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles looked with smiles, proud and impressed with the resolve of these girls. Despite what they went through, they refused to back down. Maybe they did have the potential to be great heroes after all. Alright, try and keep up. Sonic said in his titular confident tone. So, what is our next step? Blake asked eagerly, something everyone noticed. They all knew how invested Blake was with this. But as much as they wanted to tell her to stop, they at least had to sum up the information they gathered. Thanks to you, Knuckles, Rouge, and Sun, we know that Eggman and the White Fang are based somewhere outside of Southeast Vale. Tails explained. We don't have a specific location yet, but it does give us a general idea of where to look. What I'm more concerned with is what we found with the Schnee Dust records. What did you guys find? Yang asked. Weiss moved closer to Tails as the young fox pulled out his Miles Electric and brought up all the files that Weiss had previously acquired. The Schnee records point out that Vale has been the primary target for dust robberies. Weiss revealed. But, with the kind of weapons Eggman is building, not to mention all the robberies that were thwarted, mostly by Shadow and his team, there is no way Torchwick or the White Fang were able to secure the necessary amount of dust for Eggman to build the force he's promising the White Fang. So, I decided to expand the search a bit, and with help from Tails, we found a very disturbing inconsistency with the numbers of lost dust. Lost dust? RWBY asked. As all of you know, dust is a very volatile substance. Weiss continued. And despite what precautions are taken, or how secure the transportation is, accidents are bound to happen when moving dust over long distances. There are even cases involving grim attacks or robberies in transit. Any dust that doesn't make the full trip from the central distribution center in Atlas to the other warehouses or stores across the other kingdoms is qualified as lost dust. Tails pressed a button to show a holographic projection of a grid table to show the records and numbers of lost dust. The grid contained a long list of recipients from across the other kingdoms that would receive the dust, with the highlighted parts showing the largest quantities of dust that had been lost in transit. This is the recorded number of lost dust from the past 3 fiscal years of the Schnee Dust Company. Tails said, I'm not exactly a business major or anything, but I know numbers. For the most part, it seems pretty stable with only a few huge accidents here and there. Now this right here, is the record for the current year. Tails added another column to the table to show the lost dust quantity had only increased by at least 1, 2, maybe 3 points for each recipient. It doesn't seem all that bad. RWBY said. Yeah, like maybe only a few extra crystals were broken or something. Yang added. And that's exactly what you're supposed to think. Weiss said. Speaking for each individual recipient, they've lost like maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 dust crystals at most. It doesn't seem like that much of a loss individually. But if you add it all together, Tails pressed a few buttons, causing the holographic display to shrink and show the total number of lost dust altogether. The difference between the current year and past 3 was staggering. It was within the tens of thousands mark, much to the group's surprise. That's a big rock collection, Sonic noted. I'm guessing one could do a lot with that much dust. Knuckles assumed. That right there would supply the entire Atlas military for a whole year. Weiss stated. Definitely enough to build an army of dust-powered weapons of mass destruction. Blake's tired eyes narrowed even further. So, all those robberies done by Torchwick and the White Fang, Yang began. A false trail, all meant to throw us off. Tails finished. In fact, that warehouse that Sonic, Shadow, and I almost got blown up in, I think that's where all that stolen dust that Torchwick got was stored. Could Eggman do something like this? RWBY asked Sonic. He can, but it's not quite his style. The Blue Hedgehog answered. All this subtlety, using the White Fang, getting only bits and pieces from the SDC, heck even sending in people to infiltrate Beacon, none of this is Eggman's forte. There's definitely somebody else involved in all this. You really think there's somebody else out there? Someone bigger than the White Fang? Yang asked. We ran into Penny earlier. Turns out her dad works pretty closely with Ironwood. Sonic revealed. He, RWBY, Tails, and Amy wouldn't say anything about Penny being an android as that was a personal matter and she should reveal it when she feels comfortable. She said that the general was getting ready to protect Remnant from something other than Eggman or even the Grimm, didn't say what or who though. Why not simply ask him then? Him and Ozpin, Weiss questioned. Because we don't want to get Penny in trouble. Sonic answered. That, and we don't have a clear picture. We need more information before we start asking questions like that. Isn't that all the more reason to find Eggman and make him give us the answers? Blake questioned. We'll get our answers but Blake, you need to take a break. Knuckles told her, much to her surprise. Don't try and deny it, you've been running yourself ragged with this investigation. When was the last time you ate a full meal or even got a full night's rest? The bags under your eyes certainly don't help your case. Of course I'm restless. In case you've forgotten, Beacon has been infiltrated. Blake exclaimed. We have no idea who they are or what they're after. We know, we were there. Yang stated. We heard what Pfeiffer said. Then why are we just sitting around? Why not look for them? Blake questioned. Do you even have a plan, Blake? Weiss responded. There are hundreds of students here. People you don't even know. How are you going to find a spy from all of that? If you at least have a plan, you should tell us. So, what is your plan? Blake was unable to come up with anything. You don't even have a plan. Weiss pointed out. All the more reason for you to stop. I'll think of one. Blake tried to respond, only for RWBY to quickly come up and gently but firmly hold onto Blake's hands. Blake, we understand. The young leader or Team RWBY told her. We know how personal this is for you and we want to stop Eggman, too. But you're not going to be able to help anyone if you can't keep your eyes open. I'm not saying stop, just take some time to eat and sleep, get some rest. Maybe even go to that dance. You don't even have to bring a date, just have some fun with your friends, that's what I'm doing. It'll be fun, we're even planning the whole event. Yang added in a more enthusiastic tone. Excuse me? Blake questioned. Team CFVY's away mission lasted longer than expected. Weiss explained. Yang and I volunteered to pick up where they left off, even Amy decided to lend a hand. Even this little genius has got some tricky ideas he's gonna share with everyone. Yang ruffled Tails' head, causing him to chuckle. You're all getting involved in this. Blake looked towards Team Sonic questionably. I know what you're thinking, we're wasting our time planning this whole thing when we could be looking for the spy. Sonic summed up. But what if I were to tell you, this is actually part of our plan? What? Blake questioned, sounding confused. Pop quiz. If you were supervillain hoping to conquer Remnant and you infiltrated Beacon, what do you think would be the best thing to target? Sonic asked all of Team RWBY. Blake tried to think of an answer, but given how tired she was, she didn't seem to be drawing anything. The cross-continental transit system. Weiss answered, her inner student speaking out. Not only does it allow communication between the other kingdoms, if one tower goes down, the whole network fails. Bingo, and you get extra credit. Sonic joked, causing Weiss to giggle slightly. That network would be the perfect target for Eggman. Tails added. Either he destroys it and shuts down all the kingdoms, communication, or he takes control of the entire network for whatever he's planning. And nearly everyone would be at that dance, including most of us. Knuckles put in, gesturing to Sonic and Tails for emphasis. With nobody else at the tower, it would be the perfect opportunity for a spy to slip in and do what they need to do. Except, for Shadow and Omega. Sonic grinned, causing Blake to look in surprise. While everyone else is partying, those two will be at the tower waiting for the spy to make their move. When they do, the Hedgehog and walking weapon of mass destruction will catch them red-handed. To say Blake was surprised was an understatement. You planned this. Of course, we're concerned about Beacon being infiltrated, which was why the first thing we did when we got back was talk to Ozpin. Sonic said. We came up with the plan, now all we gotta do is wait. Best case scenario, we catch the spy. Worst case, they get away but we may learn more about what they're up to and stop them later. He went up to Blake and put an assuring hand on her shoulder. Blake, we got this. We've got good and solid plan. All you gotta do is get some rest this week, then have a little fun at the party. And even if we don't catch the spy, you'll be rested and ready for the next bout. But right now, you gotta slow down. He snorted slightly. When I'm telling someone to slow down, you know something's wrong. Blake took the moment to think. She didn't expect Sonic and the others to come up with such a plan so quickly, and it was actually a really clever strategy. And even if they didn't catch the spy, they could stop them or at least learn more about them, so it seemed like a win-win. And the fact they were taking this matter seriously showed that Sonic and his friends knew exactly what they were doing. And that made her feel more at ease. Okay, maybe I could use a break. That caused everyone to look in relief, particularly Yang and Knuckles. Well, there is one other thing you have to do. RWBY said to Blake. You gotta apologize to Sun. Maybe he did kinda butt in on our mission, but he's a pretty decent guy. What you said to him was kinda hurtful. Blake winced with regret. Yeah, I was a little too harsh back there. On another end, I do like how you put your foot down toward him. Weiss pointed out. Even if it was a bit harsh. I'll apologize. Blake assured. Good. RWBY nodded with a smile. Now as your leader, I'm ordering you to get a good night's sleep for today, have a big breakfast tomorrow, and have a nice time at the dance this weekend. Blake chuckled. Yes ma'am. The group shared a small laugh with each other as Blake felt an enormous weight had been lifted off her shoulders. They heard a knock on their door, and Weiss happened to be the one to walk up and open it, but she looked in shock to see who it was on the other side, with the rest of the group being surprised at the sound of a guitar being played. Weiss. John began to sing as he strummed his guitar and gave a wink. Only for Weiss to close the door to his face. Oh, come on. John complained on the other side, knocking on the door again with Weiss rubbing her hand down his face. Open the door. He knocked once more. I promise not to sing. Weiss rolled her eyes, but before she made a move to open it, Sonic quickly came to her and held her hand a bit, grinning and silently shushing her while mouthing the word, wait. Sonic then went up to the window on the other side of the room to access his comms. Shadow, are you there? What is it? Can you come to RWBY's dorm real quick? Sonic asked. And come in through the window. Looking out the window, Sonic saw a streak of red energy make its way across the campus and up the building before Shadow the Hedgehog appeared at the windowsill. Yes, he asked somewhat skeptically. Someone's at the door for you. Sonic said, doing his best to hide his grin while everyone else looked in confusion. Shadow went to the door and opened it. I lied. John sang as he continued to play his guitar, keeping his eyes closed for some reason. Weiss Schnee, will you accompany me to the dance? On, he drew a blank, unable to think of a rhyme before singing anyway. Sunday. He finally opened his eyes, but his eyes bulged out and he sucked in his own mouth when he saw just who it was that he had sung to. Shadow only had a blank expression, clearly unamused as he took the guitar, snapped it half with one hand, and handed both halves back to John before closing the door. He then turned around to glare at Sonic, who was already laughing along with Yang. Even RWBY laughed so hard she fell back on the floor, kicking wildly into the air. Tails was also chuckling as he kept his hand over his mouth to keep from laughing out loud. Even Weiss was chuckling a bit while Knuckles grinned in amusement, as did Blake. Anything else? Shadow asked. And no, that's it, you're good, Sonic said in between laughs, prompting Shadow to walk toward the window and leave. Wait, Shadow wait, Ruby got his attention as she tried to stop laughing. Sonic told us about the plan, what you and Omega are doing. Let us know if you need anything, we're in this too. Noted. The Black Hedgehog acknowledged before leaping out the window. Okay, that was flipping hilarious. Yang laughed on. Did you see the look on his face? Whose? Knuckles smirked. Shadow's or John's? Both. Yang laughed before Ruby resumed her laughing as well. As the group laughed and smirked over what just happened, Blake couldn't help but feel all the more relaxed. Being with these people, not just with how quick they were to get on top of the situation, but how they all interact with one another, it just felt good. A genuine and happy smile graced her face. John had returned to his own team's dorm where Amy and Rouge also were, having a similar talk with JNPR over the situation surrounding Pfeiffer's death, as well as the reveal of the plan to use the dance as cover to catch the spies that have infiltrated Beacon. I'll admit, that is a rather ingenious plan. Kira nodded. Very clever. Ren added. It kinda sucks though that I'm not part of the team to take down the bad guys. Nora said. Why? 'Cause you want in on the action. Rouge said with a grin. Mostly because I want to get back at the one who killed that poor kid. Nora said in a serious tone of voice, causing the group to look with concern and even a bit of grief. Ren reached out to put his hand on Nora's shoulder, which she appreciated as she placed her own hand over his. Take it you deal with that kind of stuff often? Rouge asked seriously, understanding the tone in Nora's voice. We're both survivors. Ren answered. But the problem with being a survivor, is that there are others around you who don't. John winced as he recalled what Nora told him about hers and Ren's lives growing up on their own, surviving the destruction of their homes and loss of their families, and just doing everything they could to survive. What happened with Pfeiffer, was really messed up. Amy said to everyone. And as much as we wish it were different, we can't change it. But we can try to avenge him and catch the ones responsible. On that, we all agree. Kira nodded. Yeah, guys, I hate to say it, but, you ever think we might be biting off more than we can chew? John asked as the group looked toward him. I mean, that last fight was pretty intense. I know that we won and all, but I also remember Metal Sonic wiping the floor with us. Heck, he was able to take down freaking Kira and she's the best fighter on this team. Maybe even in the whole school. I wouldn't say I'm that great, Kira admitted. But, I do understand what you're saying, John. Omega informed us of Metal Sonic being the most dangerous robot in Eggman's army. That's putting it mildly. Amy said. Eggman built Metal specifically to kill Sonic, to surpass everything he can do. And Metal isn't the only threat. That egg wyvern he whipped up. He's gonna go even bigger next time. Rouge added. So maybe Shadow is right. John said. Maybe this is too much for us. We're still just students and only first years. Do you want to back out, John? Ren asked. I don't know, the blonde confessed honestly. I mean, yeah, I'm scared. Eggman is dangerous and he's got robots that are probably way more dangerous than the Grimm. But, if we back out, doesn't that make us cowards? No, it doesn't, Amy said immediately, standing up from her chair. John, it's okay to be scared. Being scared doesn't make you a coward, in fact, admitting it actually makes you braver than someone who tries to pretend they're not scared. I don't blame you for being nervous, you're right, Eggman is dangerous. If you really want to back out, that's perfectly fine. I promise that none of us, not even Shadow, would be upset with you. John took the moment to think about his current standing. His swordsmanship skills have been improving, mostly thanks to Kira's help in training, and he's even been getting a bit better about controlling his aura. Though his semblance hasn't appeared, which was frustrating, but Kira had urged him not to rush it and just to focus on what he can do at the moment, and that's what he has been doing. There was no doubt he's gotten better, but was it enough? His teammates were also much more skilled than him, not that he had a problem with it, but he was also responsible for them as a leader, as he never once forgotten what Shadow told him. Team JNPR was a great fighting force, their fight against Torchwick's Paladin was proof enough of that. But Eggman's forces might just be greater. If any of his teammates, whom he would safely call his closest friends, were to get hurt or even killed because he made a bad call as their leader, he would never forgive himself. What do you guys think? John asked the rest of his team. Be honest, do you want to back out? Or keep going? The rest of Team JNPR shared looks with one another, as if they were silently reading each other's thoughts before they came to a conclusion. I say we keep going. Ren nodded. What he said. Nora agreed. I'm ready to break some eggs. I believe we should continue as well. Pyrrha said. Eggman cannot be allowed to do as he pleases. I have faith that you and your friends are capable of stopping him, but I want to lend a hand as well. She said to Amy and Rouge specifically before looking toward John. But it's still your call to make, John. You are the leader. Maybe, but I still wanted to hear what you guys thought. I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't want to. John said, which caused everyone to smile. Spoken like a leader, kid. Rouge complimented. With a firm resolve, John knew what he had to do. It may be dangerous, but if his friends were all in, then he was going to give it his all for their sake too. Team JNPR's in this all the way, he said with a fierce expression. Glad to hear it, Amy smiled. But right now, take some time off to relax and have fun. Enjoy that nice little dance coming up. It is technically part of the mission. Right, the dance. John looked away, his resolve fading away. What's the matter? Ren asked. Oh, he's pouty because he asked Shadow to the dance but turned him down. Rouge smirked. You asked Shadow to the dance? Nora exclaimed to the mortified blonde. What? No. I meant Weiss and, how the hell do you even know that? He exclaimed to the grinning white bat. Sonic recorded it and sent it to me. Rouge pulled out her own personal scroll and replayed the video for all of JNPR and even Amy to see, with John playing the guitar and singing to Shadow, including the black hedgehog snapping the guitar in half. Once they saw it, Nora immediately fell to her back in hysteric laughter. Amy and Pyrrha did their best to hold back their own laughter as well. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. Pyrrha struggled to keep her giggles down. You're pretty good with that guitar. Ren granted to John, who only placed his hands over his face in embarrassment. Though your singing could use some work. It was meant for Weiss. John muttered into his hands. You really like her, don't you? Rouge asked as she put the phone away and the laughter died down. Is it because she's a rich girl? No, nothing like that. He shook his head with a sigh. I'm completely head over heels for her, but she's not even giving me a chance. She's cold but, she's also incredible. She's smart, and graceful, and talented, he said with a smile. I mean, have any of you heard her sing? And with how upset she's been feeling, John's smile faded. What Pfeiffer said about her family's company, you guys can tell that it did hurt her. The SDC does have a shady reputation. Ren said. Even she knows that. But it still bothers her. John continued. I just thought, maybe I could take her to the dance and cheer her up, maybe even say something. He sighed again and looked down slightly. I just wish she'd take me seriously, you know. I wish I could tell her how I feel without messing it all up. Then do it, Pyrrha said, causing John to look at her in surprise. Tell her exactly what you've just said. No ridiculous schemes, no pick-up lines, just be honest. She's right, Amy added. Just walk up to her and tell it straight. You can't get it wrong if it's the truth. But, what if she still doesn't like me? He asked nervously. Then it's her loss, Amy answered. You're a great guy, John, but if she's not interested in you, then she's not. The pink hedgehog grimaced slightly before smiling. But you still have to try and be honest. If she takes you seriously and says, yes, the great. If she says, no, then she says, no. Not every crush is mutual, but it's still worth a shot, especially if you're honest, both with her and yourself. You're right. John smiled, taking their advice to heart. Thanks Amy, you too Pyrrha. Bet you got experience, probably lots of guys singing you songs or writing thousands of love notes to you. I can even see some girls doing it. Pyrrha gave a slight chuckle, but Amy was able to notice the sad look in her eyes. You'd be surprised. Oh please. If you don't get a date to the dance, I'll wear a dress. John said. Holding you to that, Rouge joked. Bet you got some rocking legs. That caused John to look more than a little embarrassed as Nora chuckled once again and Ren simply smirked. Amy then noticed Pyrrha looking away with an upset expression and decided to act on it. Hey Pyrrha, how about we talk for a bit? Just us girls. Though surprised, the redhead accepted the offer. Sure. Both Amy and Pyrrha were at the same rooftop where the latter would often help John in his training, seemed like the perfect place to speak in privacy on personal matters. What did you want to talk with me about? Pyrrha asked. You have a crush on John, don't you? Amy got to the point, causing Pyrrha to look in surprise with a blush on her face. I can tell by the way you look at him, and he is a nice guy. I actually do see you two being a cute couple together. She smiled. Thank you, but I don't believe it's going to happen. Pyrrha walked closer to the edge and sat down, with Amy joining her. You heard him, he has feelings for Weiss. I'm not going to get in his way just for me to be happy. Well, there's no way of knowing how things will go with Weiss. Amy replied. I know it kinda undercuts what I just said to him, but there is still a chance she could say no. Maybe, but I don't want to break his heart over it. Pyrrha responded. I wasn't suggesting anything like that. Amy quickly said, seeing how what she said could be taken the wrong way. I'm not saying you should sabotage him or Weiss. It's alright. Pyrrha assured with a smile. I know what you mean. I take it you have experience with this. Amy winced. Yeah, when I was younger, I had a crush on Sonic. And I mean a really big crush. I think I was even borderline stalker level. It couldn't have been that bad. Pyrrha said. I would always chase after him, getting in the way of his missions, trying to marry him. Amy told Pyrrha, who looked in wide-eyed surprise. And whenever he said no, I'd bust out the pico, ready to smash him. Heck, this one time where he got framed for something Shadow did, long story, don't ask, he was locked in prison. I said I would free him, if he agreed to marry me. As usual he said no, but I still let him out anyway. I wasn't horrible enough that I'd just leave him there for saying no, but you get the idea. Oh my, Pyrrha honestly had no idea what to say. Yeah, Amy winced with a nervous chuckle. Looking back at it now, I was pretty bad. But, you're with him now. Pyrrha pointed out. Yeah, as his friend and teammate. I've matured enough to not go stalker on him again. Amy said. But you still have feelings for him. Pyrrha could see it in Amy's eyes, who simply nodded in confirmation. Well, perhaps he's noticed how mature you are now, and if you talk to him about it, maybe he'll consider it or even say yes. I may not know what Sonic was like at that time, but I can tell now that he's also rather mature and he cares about you a great deal. Like how John feels about you. Amy said in a partially joking sense, which caused the two to laugh slightly. Guess we should both take our own advice, huh? Probably. Pyrrha responded as their laughter died down. But you're worried that saying something to John might make things awkward, or even ruin your friendship. Amy seemed to get the point. It was the same thing Amy felt in regard to Sonic. She knew that her unwanted advances back then often caused Sonic to run away from her. She valued the friendship she had with him, and she didn't want to risk ruining it like she almost did several times back then. Pyrrha nodded. Can I confess something with you, Amy? Something personal. Of course, the pink hedgehog urged. Aside from the rest of my team, as well as Team RWBY and even your friends, I don't have any other friends. Pyrrha began as Amy continued to listen. I am incredibly famous and a well-versed fighter. But because of that, everyone just assumes I'm out of their league and it makes forming connections difficult, if not impossible. I'm so grateful now that I've forged meaningful bonds with you and everyone else, people who see me for me and not the invincible girl. Amy looked in sympathy as Pyrrha looked down, the pink hedgehog reaching out to gently grasp Pyrrha's hand in assurance. I'm sorry, Pyrrha. Really, nobody should have to feel so alone. Amy apologized. But I promise you that you're not anymore. I know you already know, but Sonic, myself, everyone, we all see you as our friend, and that's why we were initially hesitant about getting you involved with Eggman, because we don't want to see our friends get hurt. And you are our friend Pyrrha, my friend. Don't ever forget that, Amy said with a genuine and happy smile. Pyrrha smiled emotionally as she pulled Amy into a hug, which she didn't hesitate to return. Thank you, Amy. Tell you what, Amy proposed as they broke off. If you don't get a date to the dance, how about the two of us go together? As friends. Really? You'd do that? She asked in surprise. Of course. Nobody should go to a dance by themselves. Amy confirmed. But let's try and put the emphasis on the friends part, mostly 'cause I wanna see John wear a dress. Pyrrha snorted. I'm sure he was only joking. You never know. Amy sang with a smile, which only caused Pyrrha to giggle even more. And finally, Pyrrha Nikos. Emerald summed up as she, Cinder, Mercury, and the disguised Neo sat in their own dorm. A total of 8 students helping the rodents. Ah, the invincible girl. Cinder mused as she sewed into her special outfit designed for a specific night. She's smart and tough, but I wouldn't say invincible. Mercury said as he read his comic book. Do tell. Cinder looked with interest. Her semblance is polarity, but you'd never know just by watching. Emerald explained. After she made contact with my boots, she was able to move them around however she wanted. Mercury added. It's probably how she took down Torchwick's paladin in that last battle, but she only made slight adjustments back then and with me in our sparring match. Just to make it look like either she's untouchable or that her enemies are pretty weak. Emerald put in. She doesn't broadcast her powers, so it puts her opponents at a disadvantage. Neo also recalled how she and Torchwick briefly engaged JNPR during their fight and she did have to admit that Pyrrha was skilled, but she wasn't invincible. Huh, people assume she's fated for victory, when she's really taken fate into her own hands. Interesting, add her to the list. Cinder instructed. But is she really the one we should be keeping an eye on? Mercury questioned. Those rodents are the bigger threat considering 2 of them can keep up with a motorcycle in their sneakers. You also blew up a warehouse full of dust and they still walked away. I'll admit, I underestimated them. Cinder said with a grimace. But until we accomplish our goal, overpowering them isn't an option. So instead, we'll get to them through those brats that they seem so close with. Sonic claims to value friendship. We'll show him just how much of a weakness that truly is. The next few days went by pretty quickly. Blake had done as she was told, gotten plenty of rest and was able to eat more. Everyone seemed to have everything prepared for the upcoming dance. It was now the night before the dance as John was ready to talk to Weiss and ask her out. He had a white rose in his hand and had seen her round the corner. But before he could make any sort of move, he spotted her with someone else. Neptune. She called out to the blue-haired student, getting his attention. Oh hey, what's up? I know this seems somewhat unorthodox and even last minute but, I wanted to ask you something. Weiss said somewhat nervously. Would you like to accompany me to the dance tomorrow? In that instant, John had felt his heart sink. The girl he was head over heels for had asked somebody else out. His hope diminished, he dropped the white rose and walked away. Well, that's a bit of a gut puncher. He looked to the side to see Rouge leaning across the wall. Not now, okay Rouge. I'm not in the mood for any teasing, John continued on his way. I wasn't going to, she said. In fact, I was actually thinking of escorting you to the dance. John was so taken off guard by what she just said that he almost tripped over his own feet and turned toward the white bat in shock. What? Relax, not a date or anything. Rouge assured. Just somebody to keep you company so you're not lonely. I do have a heart, ya know. I don't know, John seemed a bit unsure. Well, it beats just sitting in your dorm all alone, drowning your feelings with ice cream and watching some lame movie, right? Rouge asked. I guess you're right. John felt about it for a second. A part of him honestly felt like he was being pitied and it didn't sit well with him, especially in the fact that Rouge herself reminded him of at least 3 of his sisters. But, he at least knew that his friends would be at the dance and having someone there to keep him company sounded better than just sitting in his dorm room alone. Oh, what the hell. I got nothing left to lose anyway. That's the spirit, Rouge said. And who knows, maybe you'll meet someone else there. Maybe find another lonely girl to talk to. Yeah, don't tease me anymore. John waved off. It was now the night of the dance. Most of the students had already arrived as Yang was at the entrance to greet everyone. She wore a white dress with heels. She saw her sister enter and practically squealed. Ooh, you look beautiful. RWBY currently wore a red dress with black lining at the edges along with dark nylons and black heels. The girl cringed as she struggled to walk in her heels. Can we have a serious talk about how Weiss and Rouge fight in these? She questioned, briefly losing her balance. Don't you look cute? She turned around to hear Sonic's tease as he walked in with Tails. Like a little cupcake. The blue hedgehog wore a regular tuxedo with a dark blue tie, while Tails had something similar and a yellow bow tie. "Well, don't you look dapper, Mr. Blue Blur?" Yang complimented before looking at Tails. "And you're even cuter than before." She went over to ruffle Tails' head, causing him to chuckle. "Yeah, Amy actually designed all our outfits, said we should look nice," Tails explained. "And I'd say we pulled it off well." Sonic straightened out his jacket with a grin. Outside, Sun was preparing to enter the hall, though his attire was rather casual compared to everyone else's as he wore a black dress version of his usual jacket with a white tie, which he struggled to try and loosen up. Stupid, dumb neck trap," he grimaced. "You actually look good if you put some effort into it." Sun turned around in surprise to see Blake having arrived. She wore a dark purple dress with black heels and looked rather pretty. "Blake, I thought you weren't coming," Sun said, not quite over his surprise. "My friends talked me into it," Blake said before signing. "Speaking of which, I'm sorry for what I said to you. You're a good guy and, maybe someone who could be a good friend too." Sun then rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, to be fair, I might have deserved some of that. Maybe I do have a tendency to butt in on other people's business, but I'm just trying to help. I know, and I appreciate that, but just try and respect other people's boundaries and maybe the law too," Blake said. "I'll try for the first, but I make no promises for the second," Sun said with a grin, earning a slight chuckle from Blake. "So, does this mean we're going together?" "Technically, but not necessarily a date," Blake told him. "You're a good guy, but not quite my type. Just gonna relax and have some fun here." "Sounds like a plan," Sun said as they entered the ballroom. The dance was already in full swing as nearly everyone had partners and had begun to dance with each other. Some people helped themselves to the food while others just hung around one another and made conversation. Though one particular individual who didn't appear to be having a good time, mostly due to her footwear, was Ruby as she still struggled to walk properly. "Stupid lady stilts," she muttered before noticing Knuckles, who only wore a black necktie and nothing else, sitting by himself at a table with some food and drinks around him. She made her way toward him and got his attention with her attempt at walking. "Mind if I join you?" "Go ahead," Knuckles welcomed with a smile, allowing Ruby to sit down with a sigh. "Not enjoying the party?" "I wouldn't say that," Ruby replied. "I'm glad everyone is here and enjoying themselves, but I'm just not much of a dancy girl." "I understand," the red echidna nodded. "The food's great and I like the chance to relax a bit and not worry about fighting, but I've never been much of a party person. That's mostly Sonic's thing. My idea of a good time is a good old-fashioned treasure hunt. I'd actually love to go on a real treasure hunt." Ruby smiled, happy to find some common ground with Knuckles. Finding cool stuff, fighting bad guys and monsters, avoiding deadly booby traps. It all sounds like a lot of fun. Knuckles smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. "Tell you what, if you ever manage to come to our world, you should come over to Angel Island. That place is full of wild surprises." "Really?" Ruby beamed. "Just don't touch the Master Emerald," he quickly said. "Kinda off limits." "Totally fine," Ruby accepted. "Besides, I got dibs on it already." The pair turned to see Rouge with John behind her, joining them. The former wore a long black dress that stretched down to her ankles with a slight opening on the side while John just wore a tuxedo. "We both know how that's gonna go." Knuckles narrowed his eyes at the bat. "Oh, lighten up, knucklehead. I'm teasing." Rouge waved off before speaking to Ruby. "The problem with spending your whole life on an isolated flying island is that you're completely oblivious to jokes like Mr. Socially Awkward over there," she joked, which earned a chuckle from Ruby, while Knuckles simply shook his head. "Well, to the socially awkward," John said as he held a glass of punch and held it to Knuckles, who took up his own glass and clung to it. "What'd she do to rope you into this?" Knuckles asked John. "Blackmail. Stole an embarrassing picture or something. You really think so little of me, don't you?" Rouge replied. "I only steal the most exquisite of jewelry. Trivial things like embarrassing photos are beneath me. She's more pity escorting me," John said, not bothering to hide his disappointment. "Things didn't work out with Weiss." "Sorry to hear that," Ruby apologized. "Nay, it's fine." John tried to brush off. "Neptune's pretty cool. I get why she went with him." "What do you mean?" Ruby asked. "Well, come on. How many people can pull off blue hair?" John asked rhetorically. That said, I'm surprised she didn't ask Sonic. Now that I think about it, he's actually the coolest person in this school. Don't let him hear you say that. Knuckles commented. No, John, Weiss came to the dance alone. RWBY revealed, much to his surprise as he almost spat out his drink. What? He questioned as even Rouge looked in mild surprise. RWBY gestured over to a table on the other side of the ballroom where Weiss, who wore a dance dress that wasn't too dissimilar from her combat attire, tried to help decorate it with some white roses. Yeah, she said she had too much to focus on to worry about boys. So, Mr. Cool turned her down, huh? Rouge commented. Wow, what an idiot. RWBY looked towards Rouge in surprise. Yeah, she asked him out last night, but apparently he said no. I didn't know, Weiss. RWBY couldn't help but look in sympathy toward her friend in partner as even Knuckles' expression softened slightly. John turned toward another part of the ballroom where he saw Neptune himself hanging out with Blake and Sun, and even joking around with them, causing the pair to laugh. This really made John mad. Hold my punch, he said to Rouge as she took the glass and watched him storm his way closer toward Neptune. Well, this should be interesting. Rouge grinned. John made his way through the crowd, more than ready to give Neptune a piece of his mind. But he noticed Pyrrha walking toward a flight of steps that led to the second floor with Amy right beside her. Pyrrha wore a long red dress that stretched down to her feet while Amy wore something similar. Despite the two being together, John couldn't help but get the feeling that something was bothering Pyrrha. As much as he'd love to set Neptune straight for his treatment toward Weiss, his teammates' well-being took priority, so he decided to follow her. At the same time, Sonic, Tails, and Yang sat at a table, which had a plethora of food set up for them, the blue hedgehog helping himself to a majority of them. Someone's hungry, Yang noted. Be careful or you'll get a bloated belly. When you casually run over 700 miles per hour you burn a lot of calories, so I should be fine. Sonic waved off as he looked around. Seems like everyone's having fun. Think your little plan will work? Yang asked in a more subtle whisper. We'll find out by the end of the night. Tails said. But if it doesn't, we'll just work with what we get. Best not to focus on it too much. Yeah, probably a good idea. Yang decided not to think about it and simply enjoy the night. She noticed Weiss still at the table all by herself. Kinda sad how Weiss is all by herself. Sonic and Tails shared concerned expressions before the blue hedgehog picked up a tray of cocktail shrimp and quickly zoomed his way through the crowd, suddenly appearing before a surprised Weiss as he presented the tray. Not a single shrimp was spilled or misplaced. Care for a shrimp, milady? Sonic bowed jokingly. Weiss shook her head. I'm not in the mood, Sonic. Yeah, I can see that. So, you wanna talk about it? He asked, making his way to the nearest set of chairs along the wall, still holding the tray of shrimp and patting the chair next to him, motioning for her to sit down with him. Weiss could tell that Sonic was making a genuine effort to sit down and listen to some of her grievances. He was among the nicest guys she knew and seemed like the kind of person to listen to what she'd have to say, so she decided to accept his offer as she sat down beside him and helped herself to a shrimp. John had made his way up to the balcony where Pyrrha and Amy both were, the latter keeping her hand on the former's back for comfort. Thank you, for coming with me, Amy. Pyrrha said, which John overheard. I apologize if I hadn't made this isn't as fun as you had hoped. Looking after my friends is more important than me having fun, Amy assured, which earned a smile from Pyrrha. Is everything okay, up here? John asked, getting their attention. Oh, John. Amy looked in surprise. What are you guys doing up here by yourselves? He asked. Party's downstairs. I just needed some space. Pyrrha said, looking away. Amy, would it be alright if John and I had a moment alone? Sure, Amy said with a nod of understanding before walking back inside, leaving the two alone. So, is Amy your date? John asked. Not that there's anything wrong with it. If you're into girls, that's totally fine. My sister Saffron's married to a nice girl, so it's... No, Amy's not my date tonight. Pyrrha revealed. I don't even have a date tonight. To say John was surprised was an understatement. It may have been the biggest surprise of the night so far. What? Nobody asked me. Pyrrha told him, not making any attempt to hide the pained look in her eyes. Amy volunteered to keep me company as a friend, but that's about it. But that's, John couldn't even wrap his head around the idea of nobody asking her out. You're pure Nikos. How could nobody ask you? That's exactly why, she began as she turned around to look out toward the campus. I've been blessed with incredible talents and opportunities. I'm constantly surrounded by love and praise, but when you're placed on a pedestal like that for so long, you become separated from the people who put you there in the first place. Everyone assumes that I'm too good for them, that I'm on a level they simply can't attain. It's become impossible to form any sort of meaningful relationship with people. That's what I like about you. When we met, you didn't even know my name. You treated me just like anyone else, and thanks to you, I've made friendships that will last a lifetime. Not just with you or Ren or Nora, but Ruby and the others, even Sonic and all his friends. Amy wanted to keep me company just because she saw me as a friend and nothing more than that. I guess, you're the kind of guy the first wish I was here with. Someone who just saw me for me. She said nothing more as she turned around to walk back inside. John honestly felt like a huge idiot. He assumed Kira was so popular that she was already set in the social department, but after hearing what she just said, he never thought he'd feel so sorry for her. Did she really not have any real friends before they formed their team? Wait. He tried to reach out to her, only to find that not only was she already gone, but Neptune of all people had walked up onto the balcony. Hey, John, right? Yeah, he said in an annoyed sigh. This party's pretty lame, huh? Neptune said. I mean, ballroom dancing. PTFF. Yeah, John repeated. Cute girls, though. Neptune said. That tore it. Is that all you think about? Huh? Do you even care about the girls you're hitting on? John exclaimed. How they feel about you? Whoa, where's this coming from? Neptune questioned, not expecting this at all. How could you just turn her down like that? John accused. Wait, who? Weiss. Neptune rubbed the back of his neck nervously, unable to find a proper answer. It just didn't work out, ya know. What you think you're too cool? Too many other options. John continued. Do you have any idea how difficult of a time she's going through right now? This lame party could have been something to take her mind off all that. She asked you to the dance and you turned her down. What in the world made you think that? I can't dance. Neptune interrupted, surprising John. Beg your pardon. I can't dance, man. Neptune confessed, looking away and sounding incredibly shameful. I've tried and I'm a disaster. A trip over your own toes kind of disaster. But you're so cool. Thank you. I try really, really hard. You would rather break a girl's heart and go to a dance alone, than just admit that you're not the world's best dancer. John asked. That about sums it up, yeah. Neptune confirmed. Well, I certainly feel a lot better about myself. John commented as he turned around. Please don't tell anybody. Look, if you want Weiss, she's all yours. I won't get in your way. Neptune said honestly. John turned back around and did consider taking him up on that. But, just because he liked her, doesn't mean she felt the same way. Do you like her? Yeah, I mean, I don't know her too well yet, but, she seems pretty cool. Neptune replied. Then just go, talk to her. John said to him. No pickup lines, no suave moves, just be yourself. I hear that's the way to go. Yeah, but, hey, John interrupted. You don't have to look cool all the time. In all honesty, if you could be a little less cool, I'd really appreciate it. Yeah, okay. This actually helped Neptune to smile a bit. Go talk to her. John encouraged with a smile of his own. I guarantee it'll make her night. Thanks, you're a really cool guy, John. Neptune said as he offered his fist for a fist bump. Yeah, alright, don't lie to my face. The blonde responded as he returned the fist bump, prompting Neptune to walk back inside. John gave a sigh. Alright, only one thing left to do. Well, who needs boys anyway? Weiss ranted as she helped herself to yet another piece of shrimp, and continued to rant even as she chewed and swallowed. I mean, I at least got real friends that I made on my own. And not someone that my father set up just because their parents are part of the business. Weiss reached for another shrimp, only to find she had eaten the last of it. Sonic chuckled at that, as Weiss ate the whole tray of shrimp, causing her to pout before he spoke. Well, Sorry things didn't work out. But hey, just because Neptune was a dead end, doesn't mean it's hopeless. I mean, you got a whole world of people for you to meet. I'm sure you can find someone. Not if my father has anything to say about it, Weiss said, looking away. Your dad really that controlling? Sonic asked. He tries to pretty much govern my whole life, like he owns me. Weiss exclaimed, falling back in her seat in emotional exhaustion. Sonic, is it alright if I confess something personal? Go for it, the blue blur encouraged. One of the reasons I applied to Beacon was to get away from Atlas. To get away from him. Weiss began. I hate my father, he's a vile man. My entire life, he's never once shown me any form of genuine affection. I couldn't stand living in the same roof as him anymore. So, when I was old enough, I applied to this school. I know it sounds like I wanted to be a huntress to get away from my father, and it partly is, but I just couldn't stand it anymore. She placed a hand on her face, causing Sonic to look in sympathy as he reached out to gently hold her shoulder. Sorry. But, you don't have to worry about him anymore. Sonic told her, getting his attention. Even if you didn't go to Beacon or even want to be a huntress, it's still your life. And your dad, no matter what he says or thinks, he's got absolutely no right to say what you can or can't do. You decide how you want to live your life, you are free to choose, and nobody can take that away from you. No one. It was your choice to apply to Beacon, right? Well, look what you got from that. You got real friends that you made on your own. Heck, one of your friends is a Faunus who was part of the White Fang. Can you imagine ever making friends with someone like that? Weiss smiled. No. And the odd thing is, I'm glad I met Blake and RWBY and Yang and you. And you've got a whole world for you to explore and plenty of more friends you can make. Sonic continued. You just gotta take that step forward and let yourself meet those people. Maybe not everything will work out the way you want, but you're still as free as the wind. In that one moment, Weiss had gained a strong sense of respect for the blue hedgehog that stood before her. She could tell that what he said spoke from his own personal experience. He lived his life as free as the wind, lived his own life the way he wanted to, and was encouraging her to do the same. This was indeed her own life, and she could live it how she chose to. Thank you, Sonic. Truly. I'm glad to have made a friend like you. Weiss' smile only grew. I'm glad I met you too, Weiss. Sonic smiled back. Hey, they both looked up to see Neptune approaching them with a nervous smile. Hello. Neptune. Weiss greeted somewhat coldly, while Sonic simply said nothing but looked curious. May I join you? He asked. Weiss looked toward Sonic, wondering what he thought, but he just silently shrugged, which gave the message that it was up to her to say yes or no. Deciding to at least hear him out, Weiss motioned for Neptune to sit in the chair on her right. At the same time, Yang had joined RWBY, Knuckles, and Rouge at their table and took the time to observe the party unfolding around them. They saw Blake was having a good time with Sun, Ren and Nora were dancing together, they even saw Penny off to the side with some Atlas soldiers. Ya know, I think we really needed this. Yang said. Yeah, and you guys did such a great job planning it too. RWBY beamed. Aw, thanks. Yang pulled her sister into a headlock. Hopefully this means the other half of it would go smoothly. And you may have just jinxed us. Rouge commented. Nothing we can do about any of that. Knuckles put in. As said before, if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll work our way from there. Yep, tomorrow it's back to work. Yang said. Hey, where's Tails? She asked. I haven't seen him since he came in. He said he had a surprise coming up that he and Sonic planned out. Knuckles answered. Well, whatever happens next, I'm sure we can handle whatever gets thrown at us. RWBY said. The group then looked in confusion as they heard the sounds of laughter coming from several people in the ballroom. They four looked to see what those people were laughing at, and no words could come to mind for what they saw. Except for that, Rouge said. Sonic, Weiss, and Neptune also saw what everyone was laughing at and were more than perplexed to say the least. Okay, Sonic muttered. For once, I've got no comment. Confused at the sound of laughter behind her, both Kira as well as Amy turned around and only looked in surprise at what they saw. It was John, in a dress. A white dress that a girl would normally wear. How he got that was anyone's guess. Kira did not expect that at all. A promise is a promise, the blonde said with an embarrassed smile. Amy giggled as she leaned over to Pyrrha. Told ya. The redhead immediately broke out into a hysteric laughter with Amy right behind her. She then remembered when he said that if she didn't get a date to the dance, he'd wear a dress. She honestly felt like he was joking. John. She laughed. You didn't have to. Hey, an arc never goes back on his word. Now do you wanna stand there and laugh at me? Or do you wanna dance? He offered his hand. With a happy smile, Pyrrha took his hand. I would love to dance. He pulled her in close and they immediately began to dance. Sonic grinned as he saw that as his cue. Yo Tails, it's time. You got it, Sonic. The young fox was at the DJ booth as he plugged in his Miles Electric and played the playlist Sonic had already put entitled, Sonic's Awesome Playlist. The first song that came on was none other than, Uptown Funk, by Bruno Mars. Once the song hit, Sonic immediately appeared by Amy's side, much to her surprise. Shall we dance? He offered. Really? Amy asked hopefully. Yep, time to get freaky. You and me, and everyone else here. He said with a sincere and inviting smile. Amy beamed as she took Sonic's hand. Let's do it. Ren, this is happening, Nora shouted enthusiastically. Wait, what's happening? Ren wondered before Nora grabbed him by the arm and pulled him into the dance floor. Tails worked the lighting as he shined multiple colored spotlights on the dance floor as Team JNPR took the central stage along with Sonic and Amy. The four huntsmen in training had their own dancing beat as they synchronized perfectly with their moves, while Sonic and Amy had moves of their own that were different and yet seemed to flow perfectly with the others. All the students watched and clapped along with the rhythm of the song. The combined group of 6 all spun around and danced together before splitting off in pairs to dance with their own unique styles. Ren and Nora, Sonic and Amy, and of course, John and Pyrrha. I had no idea you were dancer. Pyrrha said, having the time of her life. Yeah, these types of things tend to happen when you grow up with 7 sisters. John said as they continued to dance. Oh, no way I'm staying out of this. Yang hoped over the table and joined the sensation, with Rouge doing the same. Come on, let's get in there. Sun pulled Blake in, who merely rolled her eyes with a smile but still joined in anyway. Alright, back up dancers. Sonic grinned as the 10 of them all danced together. It really didn't matter if any of them knew how to properly dance or even if their moves synced with one another. All that mattered was that they were having fun, and that's exactly what they were doing. They even mix-matched some partners, which led to Yang and Blake dancing with one another as well. So, nice little break. Worth taking the night off? Yang asked as they danced with each other. Yeah, it was. Blake nodded. I'm really glad I came. Tomorrow, it's back to beating up the bad guys. Yang grinned, earning a chuckle from Blake. Weiss smiled at the spectacle unfolding before her before addressing the young man she sat next to. So, what made you change your mind? You said you were embarrassed. What made you come talk to me? You're looking at him. Neptune gestured to John as he continued to dance with Pyrrha while Sonic and Amy breakdanced with each other around them. You've got some good friends looking out for ya. Yes, I do, Weiss said with a happy smile. Meanwhile, on one of the upper floors, the festivities were being observed by Mercury, Emerald, and Neo, still in her Mary Poppins disguise. You gotta admit, Blue Boy knows how to have a good time. Mercury granted. Good taste in music, too. Yep, him and all his friends are enjoying themselves. Emerald said. How long do I have? Cinder asked over the comms. We should probably be home by midnight, to be safe. Mercury responded. I'll keep my eye on the clock. Cinder responded. She was dressed in an all-black suit fit for a cat burglar, complete with a black domino mask. She then made her way across the rooftops, ready to set her plan into motion. Ruby and Knuckles hung more by the entrance. Though neither of them were the dancing type, they were still enjoying the evening and happy that their friends were having fun. Knuckles happened to glance slightly behind him, but his eyes caught something that took his immediate attention. It was Cinder in her black attire, running on the rooftops. He nudged Ruby and motioned her to look behind him, which she did, causing her to spot Cinder as well. Think that might be the spy? She asked. Definitely. Knuckles confirmed, getting serious. I know you said Shadow and Omega got this, but think we should help them out. Just in case? Ruby asked. Better to be safe than sorry. Knuckles confirmed. Let's go. They both followed the spy, making sure to keep their distance and not be spotted. Cinder had made it to Beacon Tower. Sneaking in and taking care of all the guards was relatively easy. There were 7 total, all Atlas soldiers and not trained huntsmen. 1 outside, which she knocked unconscious and hid in the bushes, 4 in the main lobby, which she was swift enough to take down with her dual midnight blades, and 2 in the elevator whom she knocked out easily enough in such a confined space. She stepped out of the elevator and into the communications room, making her way over to the central terminal. She took out a thumb drive and was ready to insert the virus. Only to look in confusion to see a red dot on her hand, and then several all over her body. Her eyes widened in shock before she instinctively leapt from her chair, which was ripped apart by a rain of bullets. Infiltrator detected. Commencing capture operation, Omega declared as he continued to fire his machine guns at Cinder, who backflipped to avoid most of the bullets before getting to the wall, which she leapt up from and prepared to fire a long-distance attack, only to get struck in the back by a kick from Shadow. Cinder fell to the floor, with Shadow immediately on top of her as he grabbed her right arm with both his hands, while keeping one foot on her right shoulder to pin her to the ground. Omega was already in front of her, aiming his guns at her face. "You so much as think of using your semblance, and I'll rip your arm from its socket. That's just for starters," Shadow threatened. Cinder gritted her teeth as she glared in Shadow's direction. They knew. They planned this. That damn swine. I should have shut him up sooner. "Who are you? I won't ask again." Shadow began to twist her arm the wrong way, causing her to grunt in pain. Despite his warning, her eyes glowed as she prepared to use her power. Nobody makes a fool out of her. But before any moves could be made. Warning. Enemy signal detected. Arrival in 1.3 seconds. Omega alerted. True to his word, something exploded from the wall closest to them, forcing Shadow and Omega back as they released Cinder, who looked up in surprise to see none other than Metal Sonic hovering through the hole he just made in the wall that led outside. "I didn't ask you for help," Cinder told the robot, prompting Metal Sonic to play a recording of the instructions his creator had given him. "The brat underestimated Sonic before, and I don't trust her not to do it again. Make sure she has a backup for when she screws up." The recording of Eggman played and then stopped as Metal directed his gaze toward her. Cinder glared back, knowing he was likely mocking her with that look of his. But she would deal with that later. Right now, they had some pests to eliminate. Shadow and Omega quickly recovered and glared at the masked Cinder and Metal Sonic before engaging in combat. From the bottom of the tower, Knuckles and RWBY could see flashes of light, fire, and other signs of battle from one particular area. "That doesn't look good," RWBY noted. "What's going on up there?" Knuckles asked over the comms. "Metal Sonic is here. Shadow's warning was cut off. They might need some help," Knuckles told RWBY, who pulled out her scroll and pressed the command key, which signaled the launch of her personal locker. It didn't take long for said locker to land near them, which opened up to reveal Crescent Rose. After claiming her weapon, and ditching her heels, RWBY followed Knuckles toward the wall. "What are you doing?" Knuckles leapt up and dug his fists into the wall. "Grab on, I'll climb us up there." Though confused, she did as she was told and wrapped her arms around him. But wouldn't the elevator be faster? To her surprise, Knuckles' climb up the wall was incredibly fast, digging his fists in and pulling them out rapidly. His speed of ascent up the wall was about as fast that it felt as RWBY herself would be with her semblance. "No. This is faster. Much faster," she exclaimed, clinging to him to avoid falling. Shadow threw a Chaos Spear, which Metal countered with a blast from his gun hand. The collision created a smokescreen, which Shadow used to his advantage as he delivered a homing attack to Metal, knocking him back. The Black Hedgehog had drawn Arondite as he proceeded to try and press his advantage, only for Metal to extend his arm blade and block Shadow's attack, clashing blades in rapid succession. Cinder fired a volley of glass arrows from Midnight toward Omega, who shattered them with a swat from his arm before using his jet boosters to close the distance, prompting Cinder to break apart her Midnight bow into its dual short blades and slice at Omega repeatedly. Fortunately, his outer armor was too tough for the blades to penetrate. He tried to punch her, but she leapt above him and fired flames from her hands and feet to gain some distance, even as Omega fired beams of lightning from his arms, which she just barely avoided as she slid back toward the hole that Metal had made when he arrived. Before Cinder could make her next move, however, she heard an odd sound coming from outside and gasped to see a gloved fist coming toward her face, which she was unable to avoid. Her own aura took most of the impact, but the force of the punch sent her flying through several computers and to the other side of the room. Knuckles had arrived with RWBY by his side, already drawn crescent rows. "Why is she here?" Shadow questioned, referring to RWBY as he leapt back to avoid Metal Sonic's electric blasts. "I thought you could use some help," RWBY stated. "Doesn't matter. She's here, deal with it," Knuckles told Shadow, who shook his head in annoyance. "RWBY, you help Omega deal with the woman. Shadow and I will take care of Metal Sonic." "On it." RWBY nodded as she used Petal Burst to move closer to Omega and see that Cinder had already recovered. Omega resumed his fire, unleashing his flamethrowers in her direction, forcing her to swiftly move and avoid the devastating flames. RWBY zoomed into the spot where she was heading and sliced crescent rows at her, but Cinder was able to leap over her slice and land on the other side. Omega halted his flamethrowers to not accidentally burn RWBY, which Cinder tried to take advantage of as she brought her dual blades out to slice at her enemy, forcing RWBY on the defensive as she parried the strikes with the pole of crescent rows. Omega rushed toward them, prompting RWBY to slide backwards and avoid the devastating punch that broke through the wall. The last of the E100 series then engaged Cinder at close range, swinging his metallic fists at her, which she could just barely avoid and tried to gain as much distance as possible. RWBY noticed the way Cinder was on the defensive around Omega and it gave her an idea. "Hey, she can't get through your armor, can she?" RWBY asked as she came by Omega's side. "Negative. Her projectiles are made from glass, they cannot penetrate my titanium shell," he replied. "Okay, let's go for a sword and shield type of thing," RWBY offered as she stuck close to Omega's back. "You move in and let us close the distance, blocking her long-ranged attacks, and I'll hit her in at close range." Considering, Omega contemplated as he fired his machine guns at Cinder to keep her at bay. "My superior body will block all her attacks, your weapon and my strength will make it difficult for her to defend, increasing our chances for victory. Your method is approved. Stay behind me." RWBY smiled almost giddily at her plan being approved of, especially by a super cool robot, but she kept behind Omega and stayed as close to him as possible as they both moved in to close in on Cinder. She tried to fire more of her arrows, superheating the bolts before letting them loose. Omega crossed his arms to block the attacks. Even superheated, those arrows did little to no damage against Omega's titanium armor. When they were close enough, RWBY came in from above for a surprise attack to slice the blade of crescent rows at Cinder, forcing her to duck, but that left her open to an uppercut from Omega to send her straight up into the air. He then grabbed her by her ankle and slammed her down onto the ground before throwing her into a terminal, shattering it upon impact. Cinder struggled to pull herself up, but used her flames to fly away as she saw Omega and RWBY advance on her even further. Shadow skated along the walls after Metal Sonic, who continued to shoot electric blasts at him, only for the ultimate life form to slice through all of them with Arondite, moving with the necessary speed and precision to deflect all the explosive bolts. This led Metal right to Knuckles, who was able to successfully land a punch across Metal's face to send him skidding along the ground. Knuckles tried to press his advantage as he tried to pound Metal while he was down, but the killer robot avoided the strike, prompting Knuckles to try and punch Metal again, but he both ducked and swiped his legs to knock Knuckles off his feet. However, Shadow was quick to re-engage, moving in fast to strike his feet across Metal's face and slice him repeatedly with Arondite and knock him back. Shadow detached his semi-automatic from the blade and opened fire on Metal, who was quick to activate his black shield and defend himself. Shadow then tried to engage in close combat, providing a series of rapid homing attacks across Metal's black shield to force him out. Metal dropped the shield and dodged under Shadow's next homing attack while also slicing at him with his arm blade to send him into the wall close to the elevator. Metal Sonic heard a yell from behind and was unable to dodge a punch from Knuckles to knock him down. Metal tried to swing his arm blade, but Knuckles caught Metal by his arm with one hand and grabbed his face by the other before rushing to pin him to the nearest wall, where Knuckles went on to pound him in repeatedly with his fist to Metal's face. After the fifth punch though, Metal caught Knuckles' fist in his metallic grip. Both the red echidna and dark blue robot glared and pressed their own strength against one another. Metal then scanned the room to see the situation they were in. Shadow had already recovered, and Cinder was unable to find an opening with RWBY and Omega tag teaming her. During the fight, RWBY had sliced Crescent Rose at Cinder's side, slicing the pouch that had the thumb drive containing the virus, destroying it in the process. They could not afford to keep this up. Metal had to execute the backup now. Knuckles was forced off by a strong electrical current. His eyes widened as he saw a surge of electrical energy build up all around Metal Sonic and realized what he was about to do. "Take cover," Knuckles shouted to his allies, prompting Omega to push RWBY back behind him as Shadow and Knuckles quickly moved behind the robot. Just seconds before he would unleash his V. Maximum Overdrive attack, Metal aimed his left hand at the central terminal. One of his fingers opened up to fire a tiny nail-shaped projectile that struck the screen right as his V. Maximum Overdrive attack went off, sending a powerful surge of electrical energy in the form of a small explosion that shook up the entire room and obliterated most of the terminals. Omega braced himself to tank the attack, and keep his allies safe behind him. When it was all said and done, most of the terminals were all completely obliterated as the room itself was nearly flattened from the attack. Though RWBY was somewhat shaken up, she was still in one piece as were Shadow and Knuckles, though Omega fell to his hands and knees. "Omega." RWBY looked with concern. "Is he alright?" "He took the full brunt of that blast," Shadow explained. "He'll be fine, but his systems are undergoing self-repair. Looks like they got away." Knuckles noted as neither Cinder nor Metal Sonic were anywhere to be seen. "So, did we win? We beat them back, right?" RWBY hoped. Omega then stood up straight. "System rebooted. Power levels stabilized. Omega, scan the room. See if anything was left behind, we need to be sure," Shadow instructed. Though the V. Maximum Overdrive would normally take a lot out of him, Metal Sonic's motor functions were still working properly, which he used to fly himself and Cinder to an alleyway in between two of the campus buildings, away from any openings. He dropped Cinder to the ground as Metal set down to let his systems get back up and running to optimal levels. This mission was a failure. Cinder scoffed in frustration. "They were waiting for us." She felt her side to find the thumb drive, only to find the pocket that was carrying it had been slashed. "We've lost the virus. What now?" Back up and running, Metal Sonic stood up straight and projected a hologram from a port in his forehead to show a symbol resembling a black queen chess piece and a recording of his small projectile impacting the central terminal, telling Cinder what he had done. "You had a backup copy of the virus?" Cinder asked in surprise, Metal giving a single nod in confirmation. The woman had a confident grin on her face. "Then maybe this night isn't lost after all. Get back to the good doctor, you don't want to be spotted here on campus. I'll blend in with the rest of the students." Metal then flew back into the skies and rocketed away as fast as he could. He would make it past Beacon's perimeter and return to Eggman with no interference whatsoever. Acting quickly, Cinder used her own semblance and portion of the Fall Maiden power to burn away at her catsuit and don the black formal dress she wore underneath as she would make her way back to the ballroom from her current position. The Hedgehog and his friends may have the advantage in power right now, but by the time they realize something's amiss, it'll be too late. Foreign object detected, Omega revealed, getting the attention of Shadow, RWBY, and Knuckles. The robot was at what was left of the central terminal and picked up a small object from the rubble, handing it to Shadow. "What is it?" RWBY asked. "It looks so small, like a needle." "It is a data drive," Omega answered. "Most likely deployed seconds before Metal Sonic's V. Maximum Overdrive attack. A programming was likely created by Eggman to act within that split-second timeframe to upload a foreign programming into the tower's mainframe." "What exactly does that mean?" Knuckles asked. "It means whatever those two were sent here to do, they accomplished their goal." Shadow glared at the tiny data drive in his hand. "Mountain Glen, this was your plan," Ironwood stated firmly as he, Ozpin, and Glinda met with Teams Sonic and Dark in the headmaster's office to review what had happened the previous night. "It was," Sonic confirmed, "and it failed." Ironwood placed his hand on the desk. "I wouldn't say it failed," Sonic tried. "Did you capture the spy?" "No," Ironwood interrupted. "She not only escaped, but apparently accomplished what she needed to do." And we know nothing about her. She is 1.8 meters tall. Omega reported, getting their attention. She appears to have black hair and amber-colored eyes. Her semblance is heat-based, allowing her limited pyrokinesis as well as the ability to superheat whatever tools she has. Everyone looked to Omega in surprise. Your statement was incorrect, he said to Ironwood specifically. We know more about her than you believe. Do you know her name? Anything that could be of value? At all? Ironwood questioned. James, that is enough. Ozpin told him, standing up from his desk. Yes, the plan didn't quite work the way we hoped. So instead of focusing on what could have been done differently, let's turn our attention to what we can do now. Shall we? With reluctance, Ironwood backed down, allowing Shadow to step forward and place the needle-like device on Ozpin's desk, the very one that was recovered from the battle. This is a data drive, Shadow revealed. It was deployed by Metal Sonic during our battle, likely carrying a virus or a similar program which is now likely in CCT's system. And you believe this woman that was with the machine to be the same one we encountered along with Torchwick? Glinda asked Sonic. Based on what I heard, yeah. The same one we chased on the motorcycle a bit back ago. The Blue Hedgehog answered. She is no amateur fighter. Knuckles said. She's not like Torchwick or most of the White Fang's forces, she's been trained and trained well. Using her semblance in perfect sync with her weaponry. You don't just do that. That has to be practiced, learned. Which means there is somebody else involved in all this. Amy added. And you believe this could also be connected with the Schnee Dust Company? Ozpin asked. You had a chance to look at that data we gave you, the irregularities with all that lost dust. Rouge pointed out. There is no way the White Fang alone could pull something like that off. There's definitely somebody else involved here. And it's not just Eggman. Tails added. He is capable of doing it, but it's not his style. He's more likely to just straight up take over the SDC than do something as subtle as this. Is there anyone in particular you can think of? Shadow asked Ozpin's group. Someone who could potentially infiltrate the SDC and use the White Fang, both factions that utterly despise one another, and still find a way to use them to their advantage. There was only one brief instance where Ozpin, Glinda, and Ironwood shared eye contact. It was so brief that nobody else would notice. However, Shadow did, as did Sonic, and all their friends. I can't necessarily give a definitive answer. The headmaster of Beacon replied. Remnant has had many dangerous individuals with grand ambitions, but without anything to go off of, I'm afraid we're at a bit of a loss. You got at least have some idea. A guess, maybe? Sonic asked. We can't exactly make a move based off guesses. Ozpin responded. It is best that we have a solid grasp of what we're dealing with as opposed to charging in blindly. Yeah, guess that makes sense. Sonic replied. Still, this did more or less confirm a theory Sonic and his friends had about Ozpin. But they can talk more about that later. Getting back to point, Ironwood got their attention. You believe that there is now a virus in this tower's systems? More than likely. Shadow confirmed. I think I might actually be able to do something about that, though. Tails said. Give me some time, and I can whip up an antivirus program that can find and isolate any malware Eggman might have uploaded. Not only will it give us an idea of what Eggman's planning, maybe we can use it to track him down. How long do you think it will take to make such a program? Glinda asked. Maybe about a week. Tails answered. A week? Ironwood questioned. Remnant's computer systems aren't exactly like what we've got on our world. Tails explained. I got to take the time to understand the CCT's data a bit more. If I just upload a program based off our world's computer data, it could just scramble everything and make it an even bigger mess. I need the time to develop a program that can work your data. Otherwise, it would be like trying to use a different kind of fuel for a car that only runs on dust. That makes sense. Ozpin accepted. Even if it does, do we have the time to wait for a program like that to be developed? Do we even have a week? Ironwood stated. Calm down, General. You're gonna give yourself an ulcer. Rouge said to him. How can you be so cavalier about this? He questioned. Because we know Eggman. Amy told him. We know what kind of person he is and that alone tells us a lot. It even gives an idea of when he's going to make his move. And when do you believe that will be? Ozpin asked. The Vital Festival. Sonic answered. It's pretty much the biggest event on the planet, right? Everyone on Remnant, all the kingdoms, are going to be tuning in. And they tune in through the CCT, right? Yes. Glinda tried to follow along. Eggman doesn't want to just conquer the world. He wants to be seen doing it. Sonic explained. Pretty much everyone from all the Huntsman academies, including the Atlas military, is going to be there. That's when he's gonna move. He wants all of Remnant to see him beat this world's strongest. He wants an audience. Eggman's a diva, and the Vital Festival is opening night. This does seem to match all the reports you've given us about him. Ozpin seemed to understand. Perhaps the Vital Festival is indeed his target. So, what do we do in the meantime? Ironwood questioned. Do we simply wait for him to make his move? Of course not. Knuckles shook his head. We're not just playing defense here, we'll be going on the attack as well. The antivirus program is only a countermeasure for any program that Metal Sonic may have installed. Omega added. We will locate Eggman before he makes his move. Do you know where he is? Glinda asked. We might actually have an idea. Rouge explained as Tails pulled out his Miles Electric and showed a map of the Kingdom of Vale and the surrounding area. We were able to infiltrate a meeting between Eggman and the White Fang, and we learned that they have a base in the southeast outside the kingdom. That general direction gives us an idea of where he might be, such as this abandoned city in the mountain range. She pointed to said spot on the map that Ozpin recognized. Mountain Glen. The headmaster of Beacon had a grim expression at the mere mention of that failure. That settles it, Ironwood said. We're sending as many troops as we can to Mountain Glen, find out exactly what's going on, and eradicate any forces that stand in our way. Shadow scoffed. I can't decide as to whether or not you are impatient to get rid of the problem, or simply stupid. Excuse me. The general turned to the ultimate lifeform questionably. We said where he might be. Shadow told him. We're not saying he is guaranteed to be hiding in Mount Glen, only that it's likely. And even if Eggman is held up there, you have absolutely no idea what weapons of mass destruction he has at his disposal. Weapons that can easily surpass your military. Sending your troops with no intel would only invite destruction and death. Not to mention the ensuing panic would draw in hordes of your Grim. What you are suggesting is the equivalent of trying to perform surgery with a sledgehammer. Ironwood's fists clenched, not appreciating the tone he was addressed in. He and Shadow narrowed their eyes at one another, neither willing to back down. The tension between the two was so thick, one could cut it with a knife. So, we do nothing? The general questioned. No. We'll go. Sonic quickly came in between Shadow and Ironwood to prevent any sort of escalation. Look, Shadow's right. We don't know for sure if Eggman's there, and if he is, we got no clue what kind of weapons he's got. We'll go and search the area. Heck, you might not even need to send your army. If we can take Eggman down before he becomes a problem, then isn't it better to risk as few lives as possible? They have a point, James. Ozpin agreed. I too would love to end this situation once and for all and as quickly as possible. We can't so bold and risk the spread of panic. I can arrange for one of my huntsmen to accompany and guide them through Mountain Glen, but as Eggman is their enemy, we should allow this to be handled by those that know him. Is that all right with you? Ozpin asked the two hedgehogs. Fine with me. Sonic accepted as Shadow only gave a single nod. Tails, Amy, Knuckles, Rouge, and Omega also seemed to agree. Sonic then noticed the tense look on Ironwood's face. Look, James, can I call you James? Listen, I get it. You want to protect your world, you want to get it down quickly so people don't get dragged into it. But Eggman is more dangerous than anything you've probably faced before, and we can't afford to be reckless with him. I've been reckless, I've let my guard down around him, and it's always come back to bite me in the butt. If it gets too out of hand, then I promise I'll call you for backup, but you have to let us handle it our way. As much as Ironwood wanted to argue with them, he had to admit that he at least understood the logic in their choices, as well as that of Ozpin. He trusted Ozpin and had served him for years. And he would go for the situation in which they'd risk as few lives as possible. But he also didn't like it when the situation wasn't in his control, and this was on the verge of becoming out of control. Can you keep that promise? He said to Sonic. Can you promise me that if it becomes too dangerous, you will call me for assistance? I promise. Sonic nodded. With a sigh, Ironwood nodded. Then go. Rouge, Omega. Shadow called his team. Yes, sir. She smirked as they went to the elevator. Where are you guys going? Knuckles asked. Mountain Glen is reported to be infested with multiple creatures of Grim. Omega said. We will clear them out and prepare the way. Before anyone could question or protest, Team Dark was already in the elevator, which closed and descended. They don't even wait for Ozpin's guide. Ironwood said with disapproval. Team Dark does things their way, and the more than capable of handling themselves. Sonic briefly said. He then turned to Ozpin. We'll wait for your guy and head out when he's ready. Best of luck. Ozpin nodded as Team Sonic left the office via the elevator as well, leaving the three alone for the time being. Do you think they've figured it out? Ironwood asked Ozpin. They already suspect another party involved. We don't know who for certain it is. The headmaster of Beacon said. All signs seem to point that it's her. The general insisted. You said it was unlikely that she and Eggman would work together, and yet this seems follow her pattern, suggesting that they are working together. Perhaps they are, and I was mistaken. Ozpin granted. However, we don't know the full picture yet, which is why we have to be careful. Professor, do you believe we should tell them about her? Glinda asked. No, not yet. Ozpin shook his head. As much as I want to, they're all still young, with a few apparent exceptions. I don't want to run the risk for her trying to manipulate them. If we do tell them, it will be at the appropriate time. You sound as if you are afraid. Ironwood noted. Because I am, James. Ozpin nodded. If you had actually seen her face to face, seen what she can do, with her words alone, you'd be every bit as afraid as I am. So, they are hiding something. Weiss questioned as Team Sonic met up with Team RWBY in their dormitory. It seems to be that way. Knuckles confirmed. Then why not simply ask them about it? Ruby asked. Because they can just deny it, right? Blake assumed. They can, but we didn't ask because we still don't have a clear picture yet. Amy explained. Hopefully we'll find Eggman in the southeast and get some answers from him directly. Tails added. Sorry I wasn't much help last night, Ruby apologized, looking down. Don't apologize for something that's not your fault. Knuckles told her. You did the best you could, and we could have captured the spy if hadn't been for Metal Sonic. He's right, Rubes. Sonic assured her with a smile, putting a hand on her arm. Don't dwell too much on the past. Instead, think about what we can do now. Live and learn. A small smile formed on Ruby's face. Thanks, Sonic. Hey, I know what could help lighten things up. Yang said as she went over to a table to pick up a cylinder-shaped package. What's that? Ruby asked. I don't know, yet. Dad sent it to us. I thought we could open it together. Yang said. Ooh, something from home. Ruby squealed as she sped over to her sister, wrapped her legs around her waist and tried to reach for the package that Yang playfully kept out of arm's reach. Yang shook the package, causing something to fall out. Something that was in the shape of a cylinder, which bounced up and down slightly before unfolding to reveal a living creature. Both teams Sonic and RWBY looked down to see a male, black and white furred, corgi as it gave a couple of greeting barks at the group. Ruby, Yang, and Amy squealed in delight while Weiss and Blake gave more startled screams. Sonic and Tails looked curious yet eager while Knuckles simply raised an eyebrow in observatory fashion. Doggy. Amy smiled widely with sparkles in her eyes. Sway. Ruby picked up her family's pet dog as he immediately licked her face, causing her to laugh. He sent a dog. Blake exclaimed. In the mail. Weiss also exclaimed. Oh, he does stuff like this all the time. Yang said. Your father, or your dog? Knuckles asked. He then noticed Blake on the top bunk of the nearest bed. Something wrong. Not the biggest fan of dogs. Blake replied. Why, 'cause you're a cat. Sonic joked, causing Blake to narrow her eyes at him. How did he even fit in there? Tails asked as well. Ah, who's a little cutie pie? Amy gushed as she scratched Sway behind the ears as Ruby continued to hold him. Sonic got a good look himself. I don't see the appeal. The blue hedgehog said before Sway proceeded to lick him in the face, causing him to laugh. Okay, I see it now. He laughed. So you mean to tell me, Weiss began as Sway directed his adorable gaze at her, that this mangy, drooling, mutt, is gonna WIV with us forever? She immediately gushed herself, taking an instant liking to the little corgi. Oh, isn't he adorable? Yeah, he's really cute. Tails patted Sway's head as well. Please keep it away from my belongings, Blake said, still perched on her top bunk. Would all first-year students please report to the amphitheater? The announcement was made. So, what are you gonna do with him? Knuckles asked, referring to Sway as RWBY put him down. You're going to be gone for a few days, right? Sway ran up to Knuckles to sniff him for a bit. Knuckles gave a small smile as he just patted the dog on the head. Sway then spotted Blake and went up to playfully bark at her, while jumping up and down, while Blake took a defensive stance on her bunk and raised her hand in a warning fashion. There's a note in here. Young pulled out a letter from the package and read it aloud. Dear girls, I've got to leave the island for a few days, so I'm sending Sway for you to take care of. Enclosed is all the food you should need. Love you both very much, Taiyang. She dumped a more than 24 cans of food on the floor and on top of Sway, who poked his head out from the pile. What is he supposed to do with that? Weiss asked. Yang shook the package and a can opener popped out as well. Okay, it should not be physically possible to fit all that in there. Tails pointed out. And, your pet dog can use a can opener. How? He doesn't have any thumbs. Yang gave a whistle to get Sway's attention. Sway, lunchtime. Sway gave an affirmative bark as he picked up the can opener with his mouth, gripped a food can with both his paws and placed the can opener on the top of the can. Using his tongue and precise clicks with his teeth, Sway was able to properly use the can opener to reveal all the wet dog food inside, which he immediately proceeded to chow down. Sonic, Blake, Knuckles, Amy, Weiss, and especially Tails looked with wide and circular eyes over what had just happened. Huh, I'll be darned. Sonic commented. We've fought aliens and literal gods and yet, something like this, just leaves me completely perplexed. Tails said, honestly having no clue what to say to any of this. See, he's all taken care of. Yang said to the group. Come on everyone, Sway will be here when we get back. Most of the group proceeded to leave with Tails and Knuckles right behind Yang, Blake hoping from the top bunk to the table and out the exit while Amy and Weiss went up to Sway one last time. Aw, you're so cute. Be a good boy, won't you? Amy gushed. Oh, I'll miss you so much. We're gonna be best friends. I can't wait to see you again. Weiss also gushed before they left too. Sonic was the last to leave, before he turned around and saw that RWBY was still inside, staring at her dog with a raised eyebrow and a smirk. You're totally gonna take him with ya, aren't ya? Yep. After placing Sway in her backpack and making her way to the amphitheater, RWBY dropped off her bag in the spot where the other students had their bags before meeting up with the rest of her team, as well as Team JNPR. The amphitheater was in quite the uproar as first-year students from all 4 academies were gathered together. And of course, Team Sonic sat in the seats above the other students as they saw Ozpin and Glinda step onto the stage. Quiet, quiet please. Glinda spoke into the microphone to get the attention of the other students. Professor Ozpin would like to share a few words before we begin. Everyone quieted down as they listened to the headmaster of Beacon speak. Today, we stand together, united. Mistral, Atlas, Vacuo, Vale, the 4 kingdoms of Remnant. On this day, nearly 80 years ago, the largest war in recorded history came to an end. It was a war of ignorance, of greed, and of oppression. A war that was about much more than where borders fell or who traded with whom, but about the very idea of individualism itself. We fought for countless reasons, one of which being the destruction of all forms of art and self-expression. And as you are all aware, that is something that many could not stand for. As a result, those who opposed this tyranny began naming their children after one of the core aspects of art itself, color. It was their way to demonstrate that not only would they refuse to tolerate this oppression, but neither would the generations to come, and it is a trend that has held to this very day. They named their kids after color, huh? Knuckles noted. A lot of the friends we made here do seem to be named after different colors. Tails pointed out. Ya know, we and a bunch of our friends do the same kind of thing. Sonic said. I think it's a lovely idea. Amy smiled as they continued to listen to Ozpin's speech. We encourage individuality, expressionism, and unity, through diversity. As I have said, today we stand together, united. But this bond cannot exist without effort. Which is why today, while the rest of the world celebrates peace, huntsmen and huntresses will work to uphold it. As first-year students, you'll be tasked with shadowing a professional huntsman or huntress on a mission. Some of you may be taken out of the kingdom for several days, others may work within the walls for the rest of the week. But no matter which path you chose, remember to be safe, remember your training, and remember to do your very best. The speech came to an end as RWBY had it played through her own scroll while she flew just above Shadow and Omega, the former on his hover skates while the latter used his rear boosters to keep up. Guy sure knows how to give a speech. RWBY pointed out as Team Dark made their way up the natural mountain path that would lead them to their destination. You think he wrote it all down first, or was it off the top of his head? Shadow simply groaned in annoyance. Speeches don't amount to much unless you have the action to prove the ideals behind it. But he also had the sneaking suspicion that there was a hidden message behind Ozpin's speech aside from the necessity to uphold this so-called peace. It was clear that Ozpin and his group were hiding something from them, and this peace was nothing more than a facade for what was really going on. "Hello, Earth to Shadow. You there?" RWBY teased slightly. "Yes," he responded, still thinking about what he might be hiding. She asked. He likely already knew someone was involved with Eggman beforehand. Shadow responded. His reasoning for keeping it secret can be logical to avoid causing a panic and attracting the Grimm. Yet he chooses to keep it secret from us as well. Omega noted. Even if he does not tell us the truth, we will find it ourselves. This secret conflict of his will not remain hidden for long. Something tells me though he might not like us snooping around. RWBY pointed out. Not saying we can't take him in a fight, but considering we got our hands full with Eggman and this little mystery of ours, it might be hard to fight two fights at once. We'll see what we can learn from this and figure out our next step afterward. Shadow stated as they came to their destination. A massive wall was all that separated Team Dark from the abandoned city. It wasn't that hard to cross for them however as Shadow ran up the wall while RWBY and Omega flew over it and crossed over on the other side with little issue. Mountain Glen. RWBY observed the destroyed city along with everyone else. The city looked like a mixture between a city in mid-construction, and one that was hit by a massive natural disaster. It was cold and barren, all the buildings were either in ruins or unfinished projects. There was no sign of life anywhere, human or even animal. It was something from a post-apocalyptic setting, something that Team Dark was actually used to. Omega, scan for Badnik signatures. Shadow instructed. Scanning. No Eggman energy signature detected in the immediate area. Omega reported. However, this abandoned city is rather large, suggesting a thorough sweep of the entire area. We can take one half and leave the other half for Sonic and everyone when they show up. RWBY suggested. Alert, movement detected in the immediate area, 20 yards northeast of our current position. Omega alerted. Their attention was drawn down the ruined streets, toward an old building. A dozen Beowulfs and a few Ursai crawled out from the darkness inside, their glowing red eyes burning down on the three intruders that had arrived in their territory. Guessing they're not the tour guides. RWBY grinned as Omega primed his weapons. Shadow drew a Rondite in one hand while his other surged with chaos energy. Let's get this over with. Back at Beacon's amphitheater, as the other students began to select their assignments, RWBY saw Sonic's team leave as the blue hedgehog gave her a wink before she addressed her own team. This is perfect. All we have to do is shadow a huntsman working in the southeast. RWBY beamed. Yeah, we'll follow M around by day and give M the slip to join our pals at night. Yang grinned. Let's check, search and destroy. Weiss suggested. The four went over to the request board that illustrated all the search and destroy missions and looked to see what their options were. There we go. RWBY pointed to one particular option. Quadrant 5 needs Grimm cleared out. Well, it's in the southeast. Blake noted. Sounds perfect. Yang nodded. RWBY selected the option and entered in her team's name. But the second she did, they were denied as the words, "Mission unavailable to first-year students" popped up in red capitalized letters. Wonderful. Weiss said sarcastically as the group looked disappointed. Any other ideas? Blake asked. We mail ourselves there, RWBY suggested. Well, that is one option. They heard Ozpin's voice as he approached them with a scroll in his hand. Unfortunately, we determined that the concentration of Grimm was too extreme for first-year students. Fortunately, Sonic and his friends should be more than enough to handle that. Though I'm certain you are all aware of that, given that you've been spending a great deal of time with them. In fact, I have the sneaking suspicion that the four of you, and possibly Team JNPR as well, will make your way there to join them no matter which mission you chose. Team RWBY looked a bit tense, with RWBY seeming the most nervous. Their talks with Teams Sonic and Dark reminded them of the possibility that Ozpin was hiding something, so this felt like something of an interrogation. Whatever makes you say that? RWBY asked, trying to seem innocent. I suppose it must all be a coincidence then. Ozpin said. So, how about this? Instead of waiting for you all to break the rules, why don't we just bend them? He used his scroll and his own authority to override the restrictions on the mission that Team RWBY wanted, granting them the permission and authorization they needed. We won't let you down. Thank you, Professor. RWBY smiled. Do not thank me for this. Ozpin said seriously. Teamwork and persistence have carried you far, as have the support of your new friends, but you must understand that the things that await you beyond the protection of the kingdom will not care. Stay close to your huntsman at all times and do exactly as he says. He will be leading you on this mission, and he can have you sent back to Beacon if he finds your skills to be unsatisfactory, even if your companions don't. Good luck, he said before walking away. The four huntresses in training walked out of the amphitheater and into the courtyard. That wasn't exactly uplifting, Yang said. Well, it's the truth. Blake pointed out. Grim alone are one thing, but if Eggman truly is involved, that makes it even more dangerous. Weiss agreed. It's gonna be tough, but I know we can do it. RWBY tried to stay positive as they met up with Team Sonic at one of the docking areas by the cyclone. Hey, Sonic. You guys in? Sonic asked. Yep, RWBY confirmed. Great. The cyclone's ready to go and we have the coordinates. Tails said. We're just waiting for the huntsman to show up. No need to wait further. The group turned around to see that it was none other than Dr. Oobleck who would be their guide, much to the shock and disappointment of Team RWBY. Now, who's ready to fight for their lives? Professor Oobleck, Weiss questioned. Yes, I'm afraid those bags won't be necessary, girls. He began to relay instructions to Team RWBY, speaking in a rather fast tone and walking back and forth in front of both teams. Seeing as how you opted to shadow a huntsman on what is now a reconnaissance mission, I can assure you that we will not be establishing a single base of operations, rather we will be traversing several miles of hazardous wastelands and making camp at any defendable locations we may stumble upon. I've packed all of our essentials myself, plotted the air course, and readied the airship. Very well prepared. Knuckles granted. Thank you. Oobleck replied before speaking to Weiss specifically. And it's Dr. Oobleck, Miss Schnee. I did not earn my PhD for fun, thank you very much. He then spoke toward Team Sonic. And you must be Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. As we'll be scouting a potential hideout for your adversary, Dr. Robotnik, also known as Dr. Eggman, I expect that we'll be communicating with each other clearly as you know our potential target, and I know the territory. Communication is essential for cooperation. You can count on us, Doctor. Amy smiled. Nice to meet ya. So, you wanna get this show on the road? Sonic asked. Yes. No time to waste. In fact, according to my schedule, we are already 3 minutes behind. Schedule. Oobleck sped off to the airship that would be transporting the majority of them. Well, alright then, looks like we're going to save the world with Dr. Oobleck, RWBY tried. Okay, yeah, when you say it aloud it sounds worse. If Ozpin selected him for this mission in assisting us, then he's likely qualified. Knuckles said. Well, you guys wouldn't be saying that if you didn't attend any of his classes. Yang commented. Hold on, save the world. They turned around to see Team JNPR approaching them, with Nora being the one who spoke to them. You're going Eggman hunting without us. I'm hurt, sad, maybe a little hungry. That last one's not your fault though, Ren. She said, glaring at her partner, who simply crossed his arms and looked away. Well, you guys are welcome to join us. Sonic offered. Team Dark's already there by now. We'd love to, but we've already got a different mission. John answered. Ren and Nora wanted to shadow a sheriff of a nearby village. Pyrrha added. We leave tomorrow. Though I suspect we'll all meet up soon. Likely when everything blows up. Ren noted. Yeah, probably. Tails said with a wincing smile. 4 minutes, everyone. They heard Oobleck call out to them. That's our cue, Amy said as she waved to Team JNPR. See you guys. Good luck. Tails flew his Cyclone alongside the dropship that carried RWBY, Knuckles, Amy, Weiss, Blake, Young, and Oobleck, with Sonic riding in the back of the plane. Everyone wore a pair of headsets so that they could communicate with one another as they neared their destination. I guess I just never saw you as much of a fighter. Young said to Oobleck. I admit, I fancy myself as more of an intellectual, but I can assure you that as a huntsman, I've had my fair share of tussles. The doctor said. Like the mushroom? RWBY asked. Those are truffles, Amy corrected. Like the sprout? RWBY asked again. Those are Brussels, Blake corrected as well. Besides, given my expertise in the field of history as well as my dabblings in the archaeological surveys, our dear headmaster saw fit to assign me to this particular assignment. Oobleck explained. What does history have to do with this? Weiss questioned. History is everything, Weiss. Knuckles told her. It's not just a subject in school, it is our past itself. Every accomplishment, every failure, every conflict or catastrophe or moment of peace that's happened in past is history. If we don't know or understand our history, we're only going to repeat it. To know the past is to better prepare for the future. Yes, exactly. Oobleck agreed wholeheartedly. History is the backbone of our very society. And the liver. And probably the kidneys if I were to wager. Thanks for the incredibly weird picture there, Doc. Sonic joked. I see where he's going with this. Tails said. We're heading to an abandoned city after all. I imagine there's a lot of history behind it. Very true, young fox. Oobleck replied. Mountain Glen, one of the Kingdom of Vale's greatest failures. I've heard of it too. Yang said. It was an expansion of Vale, but it was overrun by Grimm and fenced off from the rest of the city. Correct. And now it stands abandoned, as a dark reminder. Oobleck confirmed. And the perfect place for a madman to hide. Blake pointed out. Well, it is the most likely place, but it's not a guarantee. Amy said. Which is why we're scouting and checking to see for ourselves before we go in guns blazing. Precisely for both. Oobleck confirmed. Heads up everyone, looks like we're here. Sonic told them as both aircraft approached the desolate city. After spotting a wide and open area for the group to land, Sonic leapt off the Cyclone and onto the empty street just as the Cyclone and dropship touched down. Tails converted the Cyclone into its walker mode as RWBY, Weiss, Knuckles, Amy, Young, Blake, and Oobleck stepped outside. Once they were off, the dropship flew back into the air and made its way back to Beacon. Wow, Ghost Town, doesn't even begin to describe this place. Sonic commented as the group got a good look at the surrounding area. Listen up everyone. Oobleck got all their attention. First off, while you ladies may still be students, but as of this moment, your first mission as huntresses has begun. From this point forward, you need to do exactly as I say. Second off, he directed his gaze from Team RWBY to Team Sonic. As I've said before, communication is key in an operation like this. So, anything you find, you tell me as soon as you can. And likewise, I will share with you anything I happen to find. All 8 of them nodded in agreement. But Oobleck noticed RWBY was still carrying her backpack. RWBY, I thought I told you to leave all your bags back at school. But, you hadn't told us to listen to you yet, so I didn't. RWBY excused, earning a chuckle from Sonic. She's not wrong. Oobleck muttered to himself before addressing her again. Very well RWBY, leave your bag here. We can pick it up upon our return. But RWBY stuttered. Young lady, what in the world could you possibly have in that bag that could be so important as to bring it with? Oobleck got his answer as Sway popped his head out of the backpack, revealing his presence to everyone, much to the surprise of everyone else, save Sonic who simply grinned. Get back in the bag, RWBY whispered to her dog, who barked as Sonic scratched Sway behind the ears. We're here to investigate an abandoned urban jungle, teeming with death and hostility, and you brought a dog. Oobleck questioned. Genius. Everyone looked in surprise as Oobleck picked up Sway in his arms and literally span around in a circle. Canines are especially known for their perceptive nose and heightened sense of sound, making them excellent companions for hunters such as us. Sway barked happily. Dogs can be excellent trackers and even hunters themselves if they're trained right. Knuckles pointed out. I'm a genius. RWBY beamed while her teammates simply placed their hands on their faces. You knew she brought him here, didn't you? Amy asked Sonic unsurprised. Who knows? Sonic shrugged aloofly with a knowing smirk, while Amy shook her head with a slight smile of her own. So, what's the plan, Dr. Oobleck? Tails asked their huntsman escort. Yes. Oobleck put Sway down and began to relay instructions. First off, we need to get into contact with this Team Dark as they've apparently went on ahead to scout the area. Seems like they were here rather recently though. Take a look. Knuckles got everyone's attention to the area around them. It seemed no different from the rest of the ruined city around them, except for the fact there were scorch marks, holes in the walls, and even a few small craters along the ground. Knuckles felt along the ground near one of the craters. There was a fight here recently. Blake's own heightened hearing happened to catch an odd sound with the wind, something that sounded like waving, almost like a flag. She followed the sound to the top of a nearby pile of rubble, where she spotted a flag sticking out at the top. There's something over there. Sonic was the first to move in. The flag was rather makeshift with a metal pole and a torn white cloth flowing in the wind that had a familiar logo, a red circular-like emblem with curved spikes coming from the top and a single one at the bottom. It was Team Dark's symbol. Yeah, they were here, Sonic said to the group as they approached. Sonic then found a note tied to the pole of the makeshift flag. He took it and read it aloud for everyone. Sonic, we left this marker here for when you and everyone else showed up. This area's already been cleared out of Grim, so we're going to go on ahead and scour the west side of this city, you guys take the east. Shadow thinks it's best that we go under radio silence just in case Eggman is here and is listening to any form of communication. If we need to talk, Shadow will find you on your side, likewise you can find us on ours. Good luck and tell those kids to watch their step. This city probably has a whole bunch more Grim lurking in the shadows. Rouge. Radio silence. RWBY asked. It means we don't use our comms to talk to everyone. Tails explained. Well, considering Sonic and Shadow can both run at the speed of sound, communication by messenger shouldn't be that difficult. Weiss followed along. Very well. We'll entrust the west half of Mountain Glen to Team Dark, while we search the east. Oobleck began. Let us be on our way. Maybe it'd be best if we split up. Knuckles suggested as the group made their way east. Teams of 2 or more to cover more ground. Yes, but not too far. Oobleck replied. All pairs must remain within eyesight of one another as to not get separated. Sounds fine with me. Yang accepted. From that point forward, the group spent the next several hours scouring the eastern half of the city. Though the city was huge, even if they were searching only one half of it, it was still quite a bit of ground to cover. Sonic probably could have covered it all in a short time, but given that not only was this abandoned city home to an unknown number of Grim, but also a potential base for Eggman, even he knew to step carefully. Even when the group had to split up, they would split into groups of 2 at the minimum and would always be within seeing distance of everyone else. So far, things seemed to be going smoothly. No major incidents had occurred, and any Grim they encountered was swiftly dealt with, and nobody sustained any injuries. However, that also meant they have not yet found anything relating to Eggman. Another dead end, and no sign of any amusement parks. Sonic said as he pulled Caliburn out from the disintegrating corpse of an Ursa. Amusement parks? Blake asked. Eggman's got a thing for amusement parks, it's weird. Tails explained. Heck, our last tussle with him before we came here was fighting our way through an amusement park in space, made up from a whole bunch of small planets that he dragged across the universe. All of Team RWBY looked in surprise as even Oobleck raised an eyebrow in curiosity. He dragged whole planets across his universe to create an amusement park. Weiss exclaimed. That kinda sounds like fun. RWBY said. Yeah, well, how about instead of fun rides, we gotta deal with hordes of killer robots and carnival-themed booby traps designed to kill you. Like a roller coasters that are actually rocket missile. Or a merry-go-round that has robot horses that shoot lasers from their eyes. Amy told them. Okay, yeah, that sounds less fun. RWBY quickly replied. Guys gotta be off really his rocker. Yang commented. You have no idea. Knuckles agreed. Yes, this Dr. Eggman does not sound mentally stable. Oobleck said. That being said, let us find and apprehend him quickly before he brings such mechanical terrors to our world. Way ahead of you, Doc. Sonic stated. Ruby, let's scout the next block. You got it. She nodded as they both sped off in that direction, with the rest of the group following them. Hey Doc, ya know, I was actually looking forward to seeing a pro huntsman in action. Yang said to Oobleck. Like, fighting or at least helping us fight. Ah, but I am in action. Oobleck replied, scouring the ruins of this one great city for any signs of irregularity. He did say he was more of an intellect and a historian. Tails recalled, speaking to Yang specifically. Not every adventure involves fighting. Quite correct, Oobleck said. Sometimes a mission involves investigation and discovering. It's not always about fighting grim and criminals. Remember, this is a job, and you all signed up for it. He said to Yang, Weiss, and Blake. I do hope you all understand that. Well, yeah, of course. Yang replied, though she sounded a bit unsure, something everyone noticed, especially Oobleck. The group went to search the next sector, Yang and Knuckles going off at a construction site area as they cleared out a pack of Grim relatively easily. Knuckles had brought his right Galentine axe down to split the skull of a Beowulf in one strike as Yang finished off a Borbatusk by firing and punching Ember Celica into its exposed gut. Tell me, Yang, Oobleck approached the blonde. Why did you choose this line of work? Huh, she didn't expect the Dr. Huntsman to ask that question, but she gave her answer. Well, to fight monsters and save. No, that is what you do. I want to know why you do it, the honest reason as to why you want to be a huntress. Oobleck clarified. This also drew Knuckles' attention as well. The honest reason, Yang began. I'm a thrill seeker. I want to travel around the world and get wrapped up in as many crazy adventures as I can. And if I help people along the way, then that's even better. It's a win-win, ya know. I see, Oobleck responded. Knuckles had a serious and concerned expression himself as he too had heard Yang's explanation. But while he could tell she was speaking the truth, one look in her eyes said that there was something else to it. Weiss and Tails were both standing in a street as the former plunged Myrtanaster into the ground, creating a large glyph to halt 3 Beowulfs and an Ursa in their charge, keeping them stuck to the ground. While they were stuck, Tails quickly gunned them down with his Cyclone's Vulcan cannon. And you, Miss Schnee. Oobleck was sitting on an empty windowsill above them, writing in his notepad. A girl born into fame and fortune such as yourself certainly doesn't need the extra work. So, why chose this over a cushy job in Atlas? Weiss didn't quite answer right away. Professor, Dr. Oobleck, she quickly corrected herself before continuing. Is it alright if I respond to that with a question of my own? Certainly. He allowed. What is your honest opinion on the Schnee Dust Company? Weiss asked. Tails said nothing but listened closely, knowing this was a sensitive subject for Weiss. Well, its founder, your grandfather, Nicholas Schnee, could be regarded as one of the greatest huntsmen these past few generations. Oobleck began. He was not only a mighty warrior, but a kind individual. He built the Schnee Dust Company from nothing with only his bare hands. Such an outstanding achievement. But what about how it is today? Weiss asked. Well, it certainly has grown significantly these past few years in such a short time. Oobleck continued. However, in my personal opinion, it has adopted many methods that I do not agree with. Its reputation has become less than what it once was. And that's exactly why I'm here. Weiss replied. As a Schnee, I have a legacy that I not only need to uphold but redeem. I know what my father is doing, and I intend to set things right. Once I learned I was capable of fighting, there was no question with what I wanted to do with my life. Tails smiled toward Weiss. That was indeed a noble goal, something Oobleck also respected as he gave a single nod. However, there was also something else, almost as if he noticed something in Weiss' eyes that told a different story. Interesting. Blake sliced a door down, causing a flock of bird-like Grim to emerge. Blake backflipped to avoid most of their talons, allowing Amy to come in and swing her Pico and create a tornado-like effect to pull in the Grim, allowing Blake to shoot them down with Gamble Shroud. And what about you, Blake? Oobleck asked the girl as he appeared before her and Amy. You seem to carry yourself with a sense of purpose. There's too much wrong in this world to just stand by and do nothing. Blake responded. Prejudice, inequality, corruption, someone has to stop it. Very well. How? Oobleck asked. Blake didn't quite come up with an answer right away. Well, she then remembered her talk with Knuckles early on, when he wanted to hear her side of the story about the White Fang. He expressed a desire to know both sides of the story before acting. It depends on the situation. There may not be an easy answer, so, I'll try and find what the situation is, and act on it. Very in-depth, Oobleck noted before going off. Amy was impressed with Blake's answer, but she noticed an odd expression on her face. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, just thinking about old times. She looked away, but Amy was quick to reach out and gently grab her hand and give an encouraging smile, earning a smile from Blake as well. Meanwhile, Sonic gave a snort as he saw Ruby trying to feed Sway a whole chicken, via her crescent rose. Come on, boy. Get the chicken. Get the chicken. Ruby played as her beloved dog hopped up and down on his hind legs to try and get the chicken. That is both cute and hilarious. Sonic snickered. He glanced behind to see Oobleck approaching. Grim in this area are dust. Hey, speaking of which, I got a question, Doc. Yes. Negative emotions like anger and fear draw in the Grim, right? Sonic began. So would positive emotions like happiness repel them or something? Unfortunately, that is not the case. Oobleck shook his head. Positivity has absolutely no impact on them whatsoever. The second they see a sentient being, even if they are in a state of happiness, they will attack. Negativity only draws them in. Got it. Sonic nodded in understanding as Ruby gave Sway a chicken leg to feast off, while she put the rest of it away. So, you wanna take the next block? Nope, I believe that will do for today. It's going to be dark soon. Oobleck said as he tossed his bag to the rest of the group, with Yang being the one to catch the bag. Everyone, please set up camp in that building, and do make sure there are no Grim inside. Sonic, Ruby, and I will do one final check with the perimeter to see that it is secure. Come along. He led the two, along with Sway, further down the road, leaving the rest to set up their makeshift campsite. Oobleck led Sonic, Ruby, and Sway to the farthest edge of the city, where there was a vast forest and more mountains that stretched as far as the eye can see. But the forests and mountains weren't what got their attention. No, it was the herd of giant elephant-like Grim that walked through the forest. Even from their distance, they were rather easy to spot, showing how big they are. Sonic gave a whistle. Someone's been drinking their milk. Those are Grim, right? Ruby recognized this type of Grim. She remembered when her friends and Sonic's faced off with one in the Emerald Forest, and how Team Sonic was able to take it down. Yes, Goliaths. They are regarded as among the largest and strongest Grim in recorded history. Oobleck confirmed. Ruby took out Crescent Rose and readied its rifle configuration. Let's kill M. Not a good idea, Ruby. Sonic said, placing his hand on her weapon to lower it. Those things look a bit beefier than the one we took down, probably don't wanna piss M off. Smart move. Oobleck praised Sonic for his sound instincts. I'm afraid our weapons would do little good against them. And while you and your team defeating a Goliath is certainly an impressive accomplishment, I would not enrage a whole herd of them. But what if they attack us? Ruby asked with worry. Fret not, Ruby. Those Goliaths are not concerned with us. Oobleck began. Listen you two, not every Grim is mindless. Or rather, not every Grim is still mindless. Like those alphas we heard about it. Sonic asked. Exactly. Oobleck confirmed. While Grim are born as mindless beasts, the longer they live, the more capable they are of learning from their experiences. Those Goliaths you see before us have undoubtedly lived for hundreds of years, and they too have learned. They've learned that when they attack our borders, they're likely to die. And what we lack in strength, we make up for in will, adaptability, and resourcefulness. And that killing one human, will only bring more. Sonic noticed how one Goliath stopped and turned in their direction and gazed upon them with its soul-piercing red eyes. But Sonic simply narrowed his in return as he glared back at the Goliath with a serious expression. Then, why are they still so close to the city? What are they doing? Ruby wondered. Waiting. Oobleck answered ominously as the one Goliath that was staring at Sonic turned back and resumed its walk with the rest of the herd. Hey Doc, how long can a Grim live for anyway? Sonic asked. Can they die off from old age or? No. The Grimm are not natural creatures like us or animals. Oobleck answered. They cannot die off from old age as we can. As far as I can tell, a Grimm can only die if it is killed by another being. So, a Grimm can possibly live for thousands of years? Sonic asked. If left undisturbed, it is a possibility. Oobleck confirmed. Is there something on your mind, young hedgehog? I've been thinking about something, Sonic began. The older a Grimm gets, the smarter it gets, right? And those smart Grimm can become alphas, leaders. And there's also a whole continent filled with them. There are so many Grimm there that nobody can possibly live there. That is all true. Oobleck responded. What if there's an alpha above the alphas? Sonic theorized. What do you mean? RWBY asked. Like, what if there's a Grimm at the very center? Like the oldest or maybe even the original. Sonic explained. One that's lived since the beginning. You know how ants and bees have queens. Someone that runs the whole show. What if the Grimm got something like that, too? Like maybe the first Grimm that's lived for so long, that it's actually very smart. And maybe it's directing all the others. The idea of something like that made RWBY more than a little nervous while Oobleck took in everything Sonic had said. You are not the first to theorize a central alpha Grimm. Many people have thought of something like that. Oobleck replied. But while there is no evidence to deny the existence of such a creature, there is also no evidence to confirm it either. So, I cannot say for certain, but I won't rule out the impossibility. I take it you speak from experience. Eggman's not the only threat my friends and I have thought. Sonic responded. We've gone up against all kinds of monsters that aren't all that different from the Grimm. And nearly every time, there's always something at the center. Either a bigger monster, or some kind of mastermind. Very interesting, Oobleck noted. But we'll pursue that opinion another time. We should get back to camp. He turned around, prompting Sonic and RWBY to do the same, though the girl paid one nervous glance back out toward the Goliath herd before catching up with the others, Sway walking by her side. Dr. Oobleck. RWBY got his attention. I was wondering why I've been interrogating your teammates all day. Oobleck assumed. Actually, I was wondering, why did you want to become a huntsman? She asked. Look around and tell me what you see. He gestured to the ruined city. Lots of old buildings, empty streets. RWBY couldn't quite understand what Oobleck was trying to help her see, but Sonic could. Destruction, death even. The blue hedgehog spoke in a serious tone of voice. A whole lot of people probably died here. He too had seen ruined cities, even whole worlds, just like this. One in particular stuck with him, the ruined world of Silver's original future, the one destroyed by the monster, Iblis. While that timeline was erased, he remembered everything that happened, as did Shadow and Silver. That sight of the destroyed world was something he would never forget. And while there was no fire here, there were monsters, and that alone was enough to remind him of that horrible future that he was now glad no longer existed. Indeed, Oobleck confirmed for Sonic as they continued to walk down the street. I see lives that could have been saved. As a huntsman, it is my job to protect the people. And while I am capable of doing it with traditional weaponry, I believe I can make a much larger impact if I do it with my mind. As a teacher, I am able to take knowledge, the most powerful weapon of them all, and place it in the hands of every student that passes through my classroom. I look at this wasteland and I see lives that could have been saved. But I also see it as an opportunity to study these ruins and learn from this tragedy, and therefore become stronger. I am a huntsman RWBY, because there is nothing else in this world that I would rather be. Sonic smiled, gaining a great sense of respect for Dr. Oobleck. He and RWBY, along with Sway, followed him back to camp where the rest of their friends were waiting. Night had already fallen as the rest of the conjoined group of Team Sonic and RWBY had established a proper base camp within the old building. A campfire and a sleeping area was made up on the stable second floor while Tails had the Cyclone parked on the floor beneath them. I can't believe we didn't find anything, Yang said in disappointment. We've always been fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. I guess we can't always have luck on our side, Blake replied. Only a fool relies solely on luck, Knuckles stated. We couldn't find Eggman today and there is still the possibility that he isn't here at all. We can search, always keep looking tomorrow. And if Team Dark happens to find him first, they'll let us know. Amy said. That's not what I meant. Weiss muttered, getting everyone's attention. What are you talking about? Yang asked. You're still thinking about what Oobleck asked you. Tails assumed to Weiss. Yes, and I meant what I said, but there's more to it than that. Yeah, no, me too, Yang added, though she sounded a bit unsure herself. I mean, I don't know. I don't know either, Blake said. I know what I want to do, and I have an idea on how to do it, but I always figured I'd take things one step at a time. There's nothing wrong with that, Tails quickly said. There's nothing wrong with admitting something like that, or even if you're unsure about something. Not everyone goes at the same pace, and that's alright. Life isn't always a race or a straight shot. The girls took a moment to think about what Tails said before Oobleck arrived with Sonic, RWBY, and Sway. Ah, wonderful. A textbook campfire. Fire. RWBY went up to the flames and placed her hands in front of it to catch the warm light. So warm. I didn't think it was so chilly. Sonic shrugged. You have fur. I don't. RWBY replied in a pouty fashion. You two are lucky, she said to Sonic as well as Sway, who barked in response. Very good. Eat your dinners and hurry to bed, Oobleck instructed. We have a lot of ground to cover tomorrow, and we'll need you to each take turns keeping watch over our temporary abode. Any volunteers for first watch? Yo. Sonic and RWBY both raised their hands simultaneously, much to their surprise. We'll both watch, Sonic said to Oobleck. Very good. 2 heads are better than 1, after all, Oobleck said before speeding off. Sonic was the first to head out, with RWBY right behind him, but her older sister got her attention. Hey, did Oobleck ask you why you wanted to be a huntress? I mean, what did you tell him? No he didn't, RWBY replied. Weird. Oh well. Good night, guys. She went to join Sonic, leaving the others alone as they set up their sleeping arrangements, while the rest of Team RWBY were contemplating their own individual reasons, and the rest of Team Sonic felt concern for them. Sonic and RWBY both sat out at an empty windowsill, getting a good view of the dark and empty city before them as Sway curled up to RWBY's side. She smiled as she petted him, but heard the sounds of Beowulfs howling in the distance. You think Shadow and the others will be alright? RWBY asked. We haven't heard or seen from them all day. I wouldn't worry, Sonic assured. Trust me, those guys can handle themselves. Yeah, RWBY looked away slightly. Hey, you really think something like that might be out there? Like what? Sonic asked. You know, what you and Dr. Oobleck were talking about. RWBY clarified. An Alpha Grim that's in charge of everything. There could be, Sonic replied. I've gone up against enough armies and hordes of monsters before to know there's always something or someone in the middle of it all. I guess I just never thought of it, RWBY said honestly, surprising Sonic. Really? You never asked about the Grimm? Like where they came from? How are they here? They've always been around. We've lived them since before I was born. I guess, it just never occurred to me, RWBY said. But, now that you mention it, I'm not sure I really know a whole lot about the Grimm, other than how to fight them. Now I really can't help but wonder, where did they come from? We'll figure it out, Sonic told her. Hey, RWBY, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you want to become a huntress anyway? Sonic asked honestly. It just feels right, RWBY answered. I can't quite explain it, but that's just what I felt I've always wanted. To be like those heroes you read about, saving the world and helping people. That's nice, but real life isn't always like a storybook, Sonic said to her. I know, but it's not just that, RWBY replied. My whole family were huntsmen. My dad, my uncle, my mom, they were all huntsmen. My uncle Kiro still is. They've done so much. I always hear story about all the good they've done and the people they've helped. I guess I just wanted to do the same thing. It's so amazing. Sonic smiled. Family business, huh? It's cool. So long as that's what you really want. It is, RWBY said without hesitation. So, your uncle is still a huntsman, but what about your parents? Sonic asked. My dad retired, he's now a teacher at Signal, RWBY said before she looked down slightly. My mom, she passed away when I was little. A look of surprise and sympathy formed on Sonic's face when he heard that. I'm really sorry. Dad and Uncle Kiro keep telling me how she was the best of their team, RWBY said. How she always saw the best in people and kept doing the right thing. I wanted to be just like her. Well, you seem well on your way. Sonic said. I may not know your mom, but you're pretty good yourself. You're helping people just because you want to, and you're always trying to see the best in your friends. When we first met, you seemed a bit unsure of yourself as a leader, but I'd say you're doing a pretty good job. He gave his trademark smirk. You've got a lot of potential, RWBY, and I really see you doing some great things. A heartfelt smile crossed her face. Thanks, Sonic. No problem. What about you? Why do you do what you do? RWBY asked. I know technically huntsmen don't exist where you're from, so why do you fight monsters and bad guys? It's what I do, Sonic explained. Just keep moving, doing good, saving folks, and living as free as the wind. I want to live my life my way and live it to the fullest. But I also want other people to experience that same kind of freedom, where they're free to live the lives they want. So when someone like Eggman tries to show up and take their freedom away, I put a stop to him. A freedom fighter, RWBY said in awe. Pretty much, Sonic confirmed. RWBY looked toward the blue hedgehog before in amazement. He was always willing to stand up for people so that they can live their lives to the fullest, simply because he wanted to and that it was the right thing to do, nothing more. He carried similar traits to her beloved Uncle Kiro, but he was also just like all those heroes she read about in her books. Just like her mother. We're going to find Eggman and stop him, RWBY said with determination matching Sonic's. And if you're right and there's a super alpha Grim at the center of it all, we'll stop it too. Got that right, he grinned as they shared a fist bump. Beacon Academy. General James Ironwood stood outside the academy, standing on one of the landing pads that a dropship would normally land, and stared out toward the well-lit city of Vale as well as all the hovering battleships. Trouble sleeping. He turned around to see Glinda approaching him. Arm was acting up, Ironwood said, gesturing to his cybernetic arm, but Glinda wasn't convinced. Of course, so logically you got out of bed, dressed yourself completely, and decided to gaze menacingly out into the distance. She stated, earning a humorous chuckle from him before she spoke to him seriously. What's wrong? I've trusted him for years, we both have. Ironwood began. I can't help but feel like he's keeping us in the dark. Don't be ridiculous. You know very well that we are not the ones in the dark. Glinda said. That makes it worse, especially in the fact that he's trusting the people that he is keeping in the dark, when we should be at the front lines. Ironwood stated. This is our world, shouldn't we have the right to defend it? Of course, we have the right. Glinda said. That's what we're doing, but you of all people know that we can't just handle this with guns alone. But it's not just that anymore, it's not just Salem anymore. Ironwood said more firmly. I know what Ozpin said, but given everything that's happened, what if she and Eggman are working together? If that's the case, then the situation has become far more dangerous than what Ozpin believes. I feel like he's not even taking this seriously. He is, James. Glinda told him. Listen, I understand. You're a good person and you want to do everything you can to protect this world, I've always respected that about you. But we have to remember that Ozpin has experience the rest of us lack, and the same goes for Sonic and the others. They've gone up against Eggman multiple times, they know him, while we don't. Glinda, do you think they should know about all this? Ironwood asked. Be honest. Honestly, I think we should bring them in. Glinda replied. But it's not our call to make. They don't trust us. Ironwood said, still remembering the words that Shadow had spoken to him, as well as the distrustful look in his eyes. They know we're hiding something from them, and I feel like they will find out the truth. What's going to happen if they do? We'll find a way to explain it to them. But we can't tell them yet. Glinda said. Ozpin has been around longer than any one of us, even them. I trust that he knows what he's doing, and perhaps you should show some of that trust too. Mountain Glen. As Sonic and RWBY continued to keep watch, the group consisting of Young, Knuckles, Blake, Amy, Tails, and Weiss all slept in a circle around the campfire, while Oobleck slept in the floor above with a giant hole that allowed them to communicate with each other if need be. Though it was quiet, and they all laid in their sleeping bags with their eyes shut, not many of them were truly sleeping. Hey Blake, are you awake? Young asked. Yeah, she confirmed. Why do you think he asked us about being a huntress? Young asked. Like, what was he trying to say? Maybe he was just curious. Blake assumed. You think? Number. Yang sighed. Weiss, are you awake? Of course, I'm awake. You two are talking, she stated annoyingly. So are the rest of us. Tails said as he, Amy, and Knuckles all sat up. We're all kind of inches within each other, so. This has really been on your guys' minds, huh? Amy assumed. Of course. Weiss was the first to begin. You all know by now how I feel about my family's company, but it wasn't always like the way it is now. My grandfather built the Schnee Dust Company from nothing. He made it into a place that could share with the rest of the world, give people opportunity to work, and he was a master huntsman too. He was a real hero, people even respected him like a king, and I was one of them. But he didn't care about any of that. He told me that the joy in his life was from serving others, not from becoming a king. That actually makes him sound like a true king, right there. Knuckles said with a smile, already respecting the man named Nicholas Schnee. A true leader should serve and protect his people. But then my father took over after he died. Weiss continued. From there, he corrupted the entire company, including our family. The whole reason he even had me and my brother and sister were to create heirs to succeed him. I've seen how far he went with my own eyes, and how much he's changed not only our company, but my family name. And he's not even a real Schnee, he married into the family. But, I didn't realize until recently that, his corruption was even worse than he thought. You mean Pfeiffer? Tails asked. Yes, Weiss looked down, the words he said to her were still fresh in her mind. And he's not the only one. Blake added. Which is why I'm here, to try and set things right. Weiss stated. If I took a job in Atlas, it wouldn't have changed anything. I'm not going to let my father destroy my family name for the sake of his own personal greed. I want to be more like my grandfather, someone who fights for the people and bring honor back to my family. That's a noble goal if I've ever seen one. Amy nodded with approval. I think I know what that's like. Now it was Blake's turn. All my life, I fought for what I felt was right. I wanted to fight for my people and help build a better world for them. The White Fang started out as a pacifist group, founded by my father. He refused to sink into violence, but that just made it easier for people with guns to shoot at us. Over time, more and more people wanted to fight back, and someone finally did. His name was Adam, and he became my partner, more like a mentor actually. When he started fighting back, others quickly followed him, he even gained favor with the higher-ups, and that's when the White Fang began to change. My father stepped down, wanting nothing to do with all that, and someone else took his place. Someone that I looked up to, her name is Sienna Khan. She wanted to fight for our people too and I wanted to be a part of that. The last time I saw my parents, we argued. So, I ran away and joined up with the White Fang, because I thought we were starting something. But, it wasn't what I thought it was. Because the White Fang ended up becoming just like the people who persecuted them. Knuckles remembered her telling him her story at the coffee shop. He didn't want Faunus equality, but Faunus supremacy. Blake continued, her voice becoming more emotional. He started killing people on his missions. At first he said they were accidents, and then he said it was all necessary. And it wasn't just the people he was fighting, but even innocent people who couldn't defend themselves, all because they were human. He became the very thing I thought we were fighting against. I couldn't stand it, so I left and wanted to become a huntress. They were regarded as the most noble warriors in the world, always fighting for good. But I never really thought past that. When I leave the academy, how can I undo so many years of hate? Blake, I'm going to be blunt with you here. Knuckles told her. There really is no answer to that. What? She sat up in surprise. What I mean, there's no easy answer. Knuckles explained. You know what my ancestors did and how far they went. And those consequences were felt up until this day, when they angered chaos, and that anger was still felt even in the present when he almost destroyed our world. He's right, Amy said. What's been happening between the humans and Faunus has been happening long before either the SDC or White Fang, so it's not gonna all just go away overnight. It's a long and difficult process, but maybe you should take it one step at a time. You too, Weiss. Amy spoke to the heiress. Undoing what your father did to the SDC isn't going to be easy and it won't happen right away, but be patient and, I'm sure you'll start setting things right. Weiss and Blake both shared eye contact with one another, thinking what Amy and Knuckles just said, but also about their own circumstances. They both ran away from their respective factions because they wanted to change things for the better, and while there are some clear differences, the two huntresses in training had a lot more in common with each other than what they first thought. Well, at least you guys have something that drives you. Yang began as she flipped up on her front. I just kind of always gone with the flow, ya know. And that's fine, I mean that's who I am. But how long can I really do that for? You can always ask Sonic. Tails offered. He's actually like that himself. Moving as free as the wind, and you can be like that too. And I feel there is something that's driving you. Knuckles spoke up, looking directly at the blonde. I see it in your eyes, Yang. There's something in there. There's a reason you wanted to be a huntress. Yang looked away slightly. Well, it's not exactly anything big, or even trying to save the world like what RWBY wants. It's a bit more personal. She took a deep sigh and began to tell her story. RWBY and I grew up in Patch, an island just off the coast of Vale. Our parents were huntsmen. Our dad now teaches at Signal, and our mom would take on missions around the kingdom. Her name was Summer Rose, and she was like, Super Mom, baker of cookies and slayer of giant monsters. She smiled fondly, remembering Summer's loving face. But that smile quickly faded. Then, one day she left for a mission and never came back. It was hard, for both of us. RWBY was really torn up about it, but I think she was just too young to really get what was going on, ya know. And my dad just kinda shut down. It wasn't long before I learned why. Summer wasn't the first love he'd lost, she was the second. The first was my mother. That took all of them by surprise. Her name was Raven Bronwyn, but that's all I really know about her. You and RWBY are half-sisters? Amy asked in surprise. Yep, Yang confirmed. Guess it explains why there's not much of a resemblance, huh? Dad wouldn't tell me everything, just that they were on the same team as Summer and my uncle, Kiro. They were called Team STRQ. She left me with him just after I was born, nobody had seen her since. Why would she leave you? Blake asked in honest sympathy as Weiss had an unreadable expression on her face, thinking about her own mother and how neglectful she's been. That question, why? Yang's fists clenched with deep-buried anger. Nobody would tell me, but I was determined to find out. It was all I thought about. She shuddered as she recalled a certain memory that was really painful for her. One day, I found something, a picture of the old Team STRQ at an old hangout of theirs on the other side of Patch. I thought, maybe that's where she was, or at least there was a clue or something. I waited for Dad to leave the house, put RWBY in a wagon and headed out. I must have walked for hours, I had cuts and bruises, was totally exhausted, but I wasn't going to let anything stop me. When we finally got there, I could barely stand, but I didn't care. I had made it. Her whole body then shook. Then I saw them, those burning red eyes. There we were, a toddler asleep in the back of a wagon, and a stupid girl too exhausted to even scream for help. We might as well have been served on a silver platter. But, as luck would have it, our uncle showed up just in time. My stubbornness should have gotten us killed that night. She nearly broke down in tears. Weiss, Blake, Tails, and Amy all had their eyes widened in shock. It was hard to imagine a kid going through something like that. Even Blake, who grew up outside the kingdoms for the most part, had at least a stable life in Menagerie. Knuckles had a sympathetic expression on his face. I know what that's like, to have your family just vanish. Yang turned towards him. You all know the history of the Knuckles clan, how they angered the god named Chaos, and were all but wiped out save for a handful, who would guard the Master Emerald for generations to come. I was born into that tribe, trained from a very young age to fight and protect that sacred stone. One day, when I was young, Angel Island came under the attack from an army of marauders. Our tribe would stand their ground and protect the Master Emerald until their last breath so that nobody could ever repeat the mistakes of our ancestors again, and I was ready to fight alongside them. But my father stopped me from joining the fight. He said my moment to honor our tribe would come, but it was not this moment. Those were the last words he spoke to me. I never saw him or the others again. As if Blake and Weiss weren't surprised enough by that, Amy and Tails looked to their friend in sympathy, already knowing the story themselves. The look in Yang's eyes, however, couldn't be described with words. So many feelings were in there. Shock, surprise, sympathy, empathy, all rolled up in one. Were you, really alone on that island, your whole life? Yang stuttered. Yes. Knuckles confirmed. Without saying another word, Yang wrapped her arms around the red echidna, surprising him before he patted her back. She did it not just because she felt sympathy for him, but because she knows exactly what it's like to feel alone, or to see someone you love leave and never come back. I'm sorry, Yang muttered as she pulled away and wiped her eyes. I know what you're going through, Yang. Trust me, I do. Knuckles said. Is that why you wanted to become a huntress? Yes. Yang confirmed. Even now, my dad and uncle haven't told me anything about my mother. They haven't said so much as a word about her. Do you have any idea how frustrating that is? Maybe there's a reason for that, Tails assumed. Yang, if she's really been gone for so long, then there's a possibility that she might be, Weiss tried to find the right words. Dead. Yang finished for her. They at least told me that Summer wasn't coming back. Shouldn't they have said something if she was dead, too? Exclamation mark quote. She ranted, her eyes turning red and her hair lighting on fire. Causing many of them, except Knuckles, to back away slightly before she calmed down. I'm sorry, just venting. What I said was true, I'm a thrill seeker and I want to get out in the world and have so many adventures. But, I also want to know more about my mother. What kind of person was she? Why did she leave? If my dad and uncle won't tell me about it, I'll find the answers myself. Even if I have to scour all of Remnant just to find her grave. Knuckles reached out and put a hand on Yang's shoulder. I understand. After learning the truth about my tribe, I wanted to learn more too. But I didn't do it alone. I had Sonic and the others to help me out. Sonic's changed all our lives. Tails began. When I was little, everyone picked on me for having two tails, they called me weird. But when I met Sonic, I saw that he was weird too. The only person in the world that can run at Mach 4 without breaking a sweat. But he used that to help people and save the world. That made me think being weird wasn't so bad, and I wanted to be like him. So, here I am. Helping people. But I'm not helping them just because I want to be like Sonic, I'm doing it because I want to. Same goes for me, Amy added. I would always follow Sonic around because I had a crush on him. But when I got caught in all his adventures, and saw what he was up against, what he had to deal with, I decided to lend a hand. Maybe at first it was to earn his approval and maybe his love, but the more I fought and the more I protected, the more I realized that being a hero isn't about proving yourself to someone, it's about taking responsibility for other people. I was born with incredible strength. Knuckles said as well. At first, I only thought the purpose of that strength was to guard the Master Emerald. But when I began to explore more of the world outside of Angel Island and saw how there were people who weren't as strong, people who couldn't defend themselves, I decided to lend my strength and help them. I felt because I had this strength, I was responsible for the protection of those without it. Yang, Weiss, and Blake listened to every word they said, and with that, their respect for their anthropomorphic friends went up through the roof. They didn't take any jobs or anything, they were heroes because they chose to be. For whatever reasons they had, they chose to be heroes and saved their world multiple times. And you all have good goals, too. Tails told them. Redeeming your family name, trying to make things better for your people or the whole world, or even just trying to learn more about your family. These are all great things to strive for, and we'll support you 100%. Thanks, but it's not our primary responsibilities. Weiss said. We're huntresses, or we're training to be. The duty of a huntress is to protect the people, so whatever we want has to come second. No arguing there. Amy granted. You have a very important job with big responsibilities, but at the end of the day, it's still just a job. You each also have personal responsibilities to yourselves. Something that Sonic has told each of us, is that we're free. We're all free to make our own choices and decide what paths we want in life. If you guys want to be huntresses for whatever reason you want, then go ahead. But if not, if you want to back away and do something else, you can still do that. The point is, it's your own lives and you are free to live it however you want, responsibilities and all. Whatever makes you happy. The three girls took the moment to let that all sink in. Weiss remembered what Sonic said to her at the dance, how she was free to live her life and chose her own path and her father couldn't stop her. Hearing those words again only solidified her own resolve. She was truly free. She was free to not only change the SDC from within, but live a new life for herself, and even make some new friends, like all the wonderful ones she's made so far. Blake carried a responsibility herself, but she too was free. Free from Adam's influence and the hate of the old White Fang, and now she was free to make things better for herself and the Faunus. She was free to be a huntress and be the kind of warrior she always wanted to be. Yang was free as well. She was free to explore the world, to not only get involved in as many adventures as she could, but also free to try and find out more about her family. They were huntresses and they had responsibilities that they would uphold, but their lives were still free. Thanks, all of you. Blake smiled. Yeah, I actually feel a lot better now. Yang smiled as well. I'm truly grateful that I met all of you. Weiss also smiled. Oobleck had heard everything. He was happy to hear that not only had these young women found what was most important in this line of work, but also to know to not let this job consume them. It was important to find a proper balance between their duties and their personal lives, and with the support of Sonic and his friends, it seems they were well on their way to finding that balance. Meanwhile, on the west side of the ruined city, Team Dark walked down an abandoned street after having dealt with a small pack of Grimm in a matter of seconds. How much of this area have we searched? Rouge asked. We have covered approximately 49.86% of the western half of Mountain Glen. Omega reported. Yet no badnik signals have been detected. You'd think we would have found something by now. Rouge said in an annoyed sigh. Think this whole thing might be a dead end. Shadow thought about it for a moment. It was odd they found no signs of a base yet, but he couldn't help but get the feeling that there was something he was missing. This city was supposed to be an expansion of Vale, but how would the people travel between this city and the main kingdom? There were no bridges that connected the area. Perhaps air travel, or even. The ultimate life form's eyes widened as it came to him. Underground. That got his teammates' attention. Transportation would be essential between this settlement and the kingdom's capital. The only likely methods to avoid the Grimm-infested forests would be air travel or underground subways. This world has trains, so I guess that makes